All right. We've got things recording now, so we are going to get started. Good morning to all of you who are here. This is the Department of Human Services applying for a child care center license. I am Lisa Mills. I am a training specialist, and the other person you're seeing on camera right now is my co-training specialist, Rena Henjum. And we are here to share with you information. And we've also got Michelle McGregor. She is our assistant manager. And she too, the three of us work together as our training team with the Child Care Center Licensing Unit. So we hope that we've put together information that will be relevant to you. Just a note, we have been providing an information series in the past. So we've been providing information for new applicants for over 4.5, 5 years now. And along the way, we've done different revisions. At one point, we had 4 different sessions, but we have changed everything. And today we're doing a different format. So today it's one session. It's 3 hours. I know it feels long, but our hope is that we will provide a break kind of midway through, just based on timing. This is the first time we've run through this new revision. Even though we're very aware of the content we're providing, it's just compiled a little differently. And so bear with us. And again, we will kind of take an assessment as far as when we can take a break or possibly even 2 breaks. So we're hoping to break up the long, lengthy time that we are together. But we figured it would be nice to be able to get all of this in for one day so that you don't have to, sign in for multiple sessions. And we're excited that you are all here. Again, people continue to join in, so I'm sort of like stalling a tiny bit, but we're going to get rolling now. We do also, I want to note, we have 2 of our licensors with us as well. We call them our panelists. Keith Henderson and Pam Tuft are here. Both of them have been licensors for a number of years, and so they're along with us to answer any questions you might have. So again, welcome. We are super grateful to have you here, and we are hoping to provide you with information about becoming a licensed childcare program here in Minnesota. We are the licensing division, so the majority of our focus is on licensing and requirements. However, we do also have some of our partners, and we will talk about where kind of licensing fits into the puzzle of your childcare licensed business. And as I mentioned, we will have some speakers throughout that will talk a little bit about some of the other supports that are here while you embark on this journey to find out more information and hopefully start your own childcare center business. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. As I mentioned, that we do have panelists here, so we really do encourage you to ask questions. And in the chat, we ask that you ask them to everyone so that we can have as engaging of a time together as possible. You're not on camera, and we aren't having attendees on mute just because we have so much content. We need to continually flow through that. However, again, we really do encourage your participation as much as possible via that chat. So if you have a question, our panel is ready and waiting to answer questions, and we will get to those as throughout the presentation. We are recording this presentation, and we are hoping to have the recording available on our website. It will likely show up in a couple of places, but it probably won't show up for a couple of weeks. So just, bear in mind that it takes a little bit of time to have the recording prepared so that it's appropriate for us to post. And then it takes a little time for our communications team to get it onto our web page. So it should show up in the next few weeks or few weeks. But then if you want to rewatch anything, you certainly are able to do that, or share with a partner or a business partner or somebody else that it might be interested. So we appreciate that kind of referral as well. We do also offer this training session on a quarterly basis live in a webinar series or webinar format like today. And the next time we will be offering it is in February. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in joining it again, or again, having a colleague um, join for this kind of information. And that information, the registration information will be available once this session is over on our Child Care Center licensing webpage, as well as in Develop. And speaking of Develop, Develop is the Minnesota Early Educators Professional Development site. And Develop offers approved trainings, and this information session is a Develop approved training. So anyone who has a Develop account, which is a free account, um, and registered with that Develop ID that they have for their account, will receive credit on their Develop learning record. We will do our attendance in the next few days, so give us some time to make certain that we've got everything entered into our roster. And so watch for it probably sometime next week to show up on your learning record if, again, you provided your Develop account registration ID number and through registration. And another requirement of Develop is that you participate in the session for at least 2 hours. And so we are hoping that you will stay with us for the entire 3 hours today. Let me see here. Oh, I knew there was something else I missed. The interactive handout that was sent out by email yesterday. A couple of you might have received it this morning if you registered later. Um, that handout, and well, there's actually numerous handouts in the email that was sent out by Rena and I from our DHS. Let's see, it's dhs.ccclictraining@state.mn.us. That is Rena's and my training team email. Yesterday afternoon, I sent out a group of handouts for today, resources for today's session. They are really intended for you to use after. I mean, obviously, if you have it and have it open now, you can certainly follow along because the handout for today's session really does pretty much follow along with the content we're providing today. However, our hope is you will save those. We've put a lot of effort into creating the handout to be a guide for you when you are ready to kind of like move through the process. And so we hope that it is helpful for you to use along the way. In addition to the handout for today's session, was sent a resource guide, and that too is a very kind of a rich resource for you to keep and use throughout this process as well as once you're opened and operating. There in that resource guide, there are links to way more information about a lot of the programs that are out there to help support you both getting started as well as operating your business. And then there are also some handouts in there from some of the speakers that we will be hearing from. And we hope that, again, those will be a good foundational piece for you as you move through the process. Also part of our housekeeping is we just like to remind everyone that as part of a licensing division at the Department of Human Services, we work really hard to kind of stay within our lane of expertise. And we do love talking about, we kind of nerd out a little bit about talking about rule and statute. So if you ever get any one of us one-on-one, you know that we would love to have questions asked of us. And we do like to talk about requirements as it is our lane and our area of expertise. So throughout today's presentation, you know, again, we have our panel available for you to ask questions about licensing and this process. And we also have we really want to make ourselves available to you when you have questions throughout. So you will hear more about that throughout the presentation. But today we are not providing legal or business advice. We are not really here to give you everything there is to know about starting a child care center or all of the regulations or what it takes to operate a licensed child care center. But most of all, we are here to provide you information that we think and what we have found throughout the years of doing this And I want to share too that each of us that are here today have also worked in childcare centers ourselves, in various capacities. And so we have a great deal of experience and of going through this process on both sides of the avenue. So we want to make ourselves available to you. We want you to know that our team, our entire licensing team, is available. So we're here to really kind of connect with you and let you know that you're not doing this alone. And we are here to provide you some guidance. We will reference some rules and statutes throughout the presentation. We are also going to reference some of the other supports that are out there, but mainly what our goal is to kind of guide you to where you can find out more information from some of those other various resources that are there. And then later in the presentation, we will really kind of knock through the details of what requirements are in the application. And then later on, we will talk about, kind of what to expect when you are, going through the process, as well as once you become licensed. And so that's what we're here to share with you today. Whoops. So part one, during this first session, we really just wanted to talk about, like, we know you're here because you want information. And I do want to state too, we understand that a numerous amount of you might be at varying stages of this process. Some of you may be extremely new to, like, hey, I just want to learn more information about what it takes. Others might already be working through the process. And so for you, we hope that this information too will kind of just solidify your knowledge. But really, our goal is to kind of give you a foundational amount of information, and so that at a certain point when you are ready or are applying, that you will have some aha moments. I've heard about that through this presentation. So this first part we've titled, I want to apply for a child care center license, but first I need to understand. And there's numerous things you need to understand. And as I've mentioned, licensing is really just one piece of the puzzle. We are here to support you. We're here to guide you. But there are certain things that are outside our area. And so we just wanted you to kind of have a better understanding of what you might need to know. And in this first section, we will talk a little about childcare in Minnesota, as well as some of the resources that are out there, other pieces to that puzzle that I referred to, that are there for you throughout your adventure of starting a childcare center. All right, on this slide here, we are showing a visual to help you better understand what childcare in Minnesota looks like. So the basic understanding, or first place to start, is that to realize that Minnesota law starts with requiring that all childcare provided in Minnesota needs to be licensed unless an exclusion is met. Licensure provides the necessary oversight to ensure that childcare is provided in a healthy and safe environment by qualified people while meeting the developmental needs of all children in care. In the 2014 federal reauthorization of the Child Care and Development Fund block grant required states to require health and safety standards and monitor for client compliance for any programs that participate in childcare assistance. And so during the 2017 legislative session, state legislators enacted changes to bring the state of Minnesota into compliance with that federal Child Care and Development Fund requirement. So our licensing division in Minnesota, or here at DHS currently, we will be transitioning to the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families by June of 2025. But currently we are housed, our child care center licensing unit is housed within DHS. And we are responsible for granting child care licenses and monitoring licensed child care centers. In addition, our child care center licensing unit does also monitor certified child care centers. And so on this left side here of the slide, you will see that the majority, our lane, that Ren and I and Michelle and the rest of our team of licensors monitor are those programs that are here on the left side of the screen. We monitor licensed childcare centers, and that's what today's session is about. And again, all childcare needs to be licensed unless there's an exemption met. If an exemption is met and a childcare center is eligible to operate as a licensed exempt program, but wants to participate in receiving either federal state funding, like through CCAP or other grants and payment programs, they would need to register as being a certified center. Now, there's also family childcare in Minnesota. We are not really here today to talk about family childcare, but just for your awareness, licensed family childcare is also required to be licensed unless an exclusion is met. And you can read about all of the exclusions for either centers or family childcare in Minnesota Statute 245A.03. If an exclusion is met for a family childcare program to operate unlicensed, and then they would, if they wanted to receive those fundings or participate as a CCAP recipient, they would need to register with our CCAP partners that are at the Department of Children, Youth, and Families as a legal non-licensed provider. Now, in the handout, I've really provided a lot of information about these differences, but I do want to stress today's session is strictly on this licensed childcare center. So the requirements for each of these different types of programs are different. Today's session is strictly about the process of becoming a licensed childcare center. All of that information can seem like a lot and feel daunting, but we want to reassure you that we have information available to you. And Ren and I, as well as Michelle, we work really hard to keep our web pages current and up to date. We are constantly monitoring them as well as the resources we provide on our web page to make certain that the information there is relevant. So on this page here, as well as listed and linked in your handout, are links to the main web pages from DHS that are specific to childcare and to childcare centers. And so the top one listed here is really kind of a main web page, and that is one where you will find links to licensed childcare centers, our web page, and you'll also find links on that top link here to a page that's specific to family childcare and one specific to certified, if you're interested in learning more about those two types of programs. However, we do the second one listed here is our what we call our page, and it's our licensed childcare center unit webpage. On that webpage, you will find a lot of information. You may have found information about today's session because we always put our registration and information about today's session on there. You'll also find numerous information about different requirements, things going on in the field that we think is important for our licensed programs to know, resources that are available. We have broken down some of the areas where people tend to have questions on, say, some health and safety requirements. We have different sections there that offer you a more of a plain language information about requirements, referencing those. We've got a section on training where you can see the specific details about training requirements. We've got forms and resources. So we have a lengthy section on this second link here, that licensed child care center webpage, on forms and other resources where we have created forms that are of use for anyone operating a licensed child care program to use to help with their tracking of different requirements. And then we also have a link from that page, our licensed child care center page, to our applying for child care center license website or webpage. On the applying for child care center license webpage, we have more detailed information about the process, as well as information and links to the provider hub. You may or may not know that in the last year, our child care center licensing unit, all of our applications now for over a year now have come through a provider hub. The state invested and is still working at creating a portal, a website portal you'll hear more about later in the presentation. And that is where you will go to actually fill out the application. And so off of the applying for a child care center license webpage, there are more links and resources that will help guide you through that process as well. And we want you to know first off that again, we are available to you. Our team is very devoted to being available and answering questions as they come in. And once you are assigned a licensor later on in the process, that person will really be your first point of contact because they will know specific details about your program and have a better understanding of maybe some specific situations or questions you have. However, for general questions, or if you have questions before you have an assigned licensor, or you can't reach your assigned licensor, we have a licensor on call Monday through Fridays from 8 to 4:30 by phone or email. If you want to reach them by phone, you can call 651-431-6015, or you can reach them via email at dhs.ccc.licensing@state.mn.us. If you have training related questions or comments or feedback about this specific training, you're certainly welcome to reach out to Rena or myself. We are the Child Care Center training specialists, and our email is dhs.ccclictraining@state.mn.us. So again, we just want you to know through this process, our licensing team is really devoted and committed to helping you. If nothing else, helping direct you to where you should go. One such area where we might direct you to go, and a really good place for you to better understand all of the rules and statute that are in place for licensed childcare businesses, is the Office of the Reviser of Statutes. Now, to reference and learn about all the exact statutes or rules that a license holder you would be required to know and comply with, you can search directly from this website, the Office of Reviser of Statutes. It is a searchable site to all Minnesota statute, session laws, and rules. And a link to this site is provided in your handout. And it is strongly recommended that you bookmark this now and all the way throughout operating your business so that you can stay alert and go directly to the source of the requirements for your program. It's a great site that offers you to even you can control F and search a keyword. So it's a really user-friendly site to be able to find information. However, we do want you to note, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that. Due to our DHS Child Care Center licensing unit moving from DHS to DCYF, as I mentioned, and that's the new agency that was created. It started and opened in July of this year. It's the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. Our team is transitioning by June of 2025. And when that transition occurs, our Child Care Center licensing statute will move from what is listed here and has currently, or is current and has traditionally been as Minnesota Statute Chapter 245A. It is moving to Chapter 142B. And that seems very confusing, and it kind of is right now. Because if you go to that Reviser of Statute site and search for 245A, the Reviser of Statutes has already kind of anticipated that transition and has moved some of the statutes. The rules, the requirements haven't changed, but they've moved them to different chapters. So right now, searching in that Reviser of Statutes site might be a little confusing. And so in your handout, we have provided you with links to the archived page from the Reviser of Statutes that holds it says right on there in the link, you'll be able to see what I provided has the 2023 standards. And those are what is current right now and until we make that transition. So that's very confusing, and I know, and a lot of information. But also to note on this page here is really the statutes we do reference. So again, currently, traditionally, it's been 245A for statutes. And then there is Minnesota Rule 9503, often referred to as Rule 3, and that has specific rules, and that is in place and searchable off of that original link that for the revisor statute, because that is still current. And that is where you will find very specific rules related to childcare centers that are licensed. Then there's also Minnesota statute section 260E, and that is the Maltreatment of Minors Act that childcare center programs must also adhere to. In addition to that, there are state as well as federal requirements for background studies for childcare programs, and you will find information about those background study requirements in the Human Services Background Studies Act, which is in Minnesota Statutes Chapter 245C. So again, we wanted you to know what to reference. There's a lot more information in your handout that really kind of helps you with the crosswalk right now during our transition time. So, as I just mentioned, background study requirements. We just wanted you to be aware that our partners at DHS in the background studies division is who we work with for our child care center programs. Licensed child care centers are required to comply with background study requirements out of that Minnesota statute, chapter 245C. All controlling individuals for your business must be cleared before a license can be granted, as well as any staff that need to be cleared, or all staff need to be cleared before working. So if you're, before you get started, and then ongoing, any controlling individuals as well as staff need to be cleared before they can work. For more information on the background study process, the background study division has created a wealth of resources to help people understand and get through the background study process. And you will, once you do apply in the provider hub, one of the first pieces of information you will get back from our licensing division is actually from background studies. So it's really not from our licensing division, it's from the background studies division. So you will receive, once you apply in the provider hub, an email from Net Study 2.0 that will provide you with very explicit instructions about getting started in the process of having background studies done. Once you start, once you've applied in the provider hub, that email will come out to the authorized agent of your program with the email that you've provided, and will again walk you through instructions on what's next and when to get started, because it's a process you want to start early. And so it does take some time for background studies to be processed and for a clearance letter to be issued. And so for any staff now and into the future, do note that it's very important that you get those background studies done so that they have a clearance before they are able to work in the or work with children in the program. All right. So beyond those background studies, resources and information, we wanted you to know that there are numerous other business support agencies and organizations that are devoted and have people devoted to working on supporting small businesses, and some even specific information to childcare centers. And so here we just want you to see, we are again we're actually a large piece of the puzzle, but there are other pieces of the puzzle for your childcare center business that's licensed. And we wanted you to be aware of it. So in our handout, we have presented information on where you can find out more from several of these agencies that offer information. And we do suggest that you sign up to receive updates from these various organizations or these agencies, these state agencies. And we've provided links to where you can sign up to do that as well. Because a lot of times they offer information that might be relevant to your business that won't come directly from licensing. So for example, the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, which is referred to as DEED. DEED will offer you information about business. They have a small business website that is really resourceful when you're getting your business organization started. And so that might be a way to, dive into really understanding how to organize your business structure of your business. Then the Department of Labor and Industry, our partners at that state agency, they are the experts on employee laws, worker compensation insurance questions, understanding OSHA standards. So reach out, do some research now. We really recommend any research you can do before you apply and really get started on the venture of creating a business is really critical to how quickly you move through the process, as well as the success of your business. That foundation, this is your foundational time. The Department of Revenue will be available, or they provide oftentimes really nice webinars about tax laws for businesses and employees, and so seek them for information on that. We did, include here the U.S. Small Business Administration because they do have a very large section on childcare centers, and so you might want to do a little research and dive into what their recommendations are because they've got a wealth of resources for small business that is specific to childcare as well. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety is partnered with the Minnesota Safety Council, and that is where you'll find information about child passenger safety. And so that's, again, not really while there are requirements for um, anyone in a licensed child care center who is transporting a child that will be monitored by licensing. Some of the training that they offer and is a requirement would come through this Minnesota Department of Public Safety and Minnesota Safety Council. So we've included information on that. The Department of Health, we work very closely with the Minnesota Department of Health as well as local public health um, on issues such as immunization information, um, excludable illnesses, and reportable illnesses. And so understanding that you will, as a licensed childcare business, really be connected with many of these other agencies is important knowledge for you to know now. The Minnesota Department of Education has information about USDA requirements and menu components. They also offer information on like knowledge competency a framework, which is important for educators who work in childcare programs to have skills in. There is also the early childhood indicators of progress that is a really nice framework for educators to follow along to understand development and what the expectations are of the children that will be, you will serve in your programs. So check out their information. There's also the Minnesota Children's Cabinet that kind of oversees any information that is related to young children, and we work very closely with them in partnership. And then there's the Minnesota Department of Children, Youth, and Families, as I referenced. That's where the new state agency that has been developed, where any program throughout these various agencies that's specific to children, youth, and families is coming together to work under one umbrella. And that is where our child care center licensing unit will move to by June of 2025. We want to mention local zoning and community guidance. Seek information throughout your community and where you're working or you wanting to start your business. There may be business associations um, or resources that your county could provide you or city about local zoning requirements, as well as starting up childcare, because that's a lot of initiatives focused on childcare is really a big deal these days. And then do know that later in the process, there will be local inspections that will need to occur in your program. However, again, they occur later in the process of becoming licensed. But it's important for you early on to understand that there will be fire codes that you need to follow. And you can find out information because the state fire marshal that we work closely with has created some resources that are specific to childcare and childcare centers. So So we've included links to all of that information, and we just wanted you to know again, there's many pieces to this very big puzzle. As I just referenced, we do work really closely with the state fire marshal, and in partnership, there have been resources created to help license the people applying to have a child care center license as well as operate a program to understand what the requirements are for child care centers. Because it can be interesting and complex. And so that is really kind of out of our specific licensing wheelhouse. And so having a resource from the state fire marshal has been super helpful to applicants. And we wanted you to have that early on in the process so that you are aware of these fire codes that your program will need to eventually um, have an inspection for and pass before getting a license. And so seek those out and know that they are there for you. And then Choose Safe Places Minnesota is also another resource. This one is a grant program housed under the Minnesota Department of Health. There are links to this to more information, as well as I sent out one of their handouts to you yesterday with the handout, the resource guides. Um, Choose Safe Places Minnesota is available to help businesses better understand it and ensure that the location that they are choosing to operate is environmentally safe. And so Choose Safe Places Minnesota is a free program that will help you before you decide on your location to better ensure that the location is safe from environmental contaminants. So learn more about them. They too are there to support applicants. And then next here, and I'm hoping we have our speaker on. I'm not seeing Matt listed here. Is Matt on, Brenna? Oh, yes, there's Matt.
Yeah, he's
I
there.
see him. Okay, guys, I was worried. I haven't watched. I've been focused right here. We have today Matt Carlson, who very graciously always comes to our sessions and offers information about an essential resource that my opinion, it's a very essential resource for anyone interested in starting or operating a child care program in Minnesota. And so he's going to tell you about Child Care Wayfinder. So Matt, take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. As Lisa
Matt,
said,
it's kind of hard to hear you.
oh, let's see. Is that better?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having me. And as Lisa said, my name is Matt Carlson. I'm the Child Care Capacity Building Manager at Child Care of Minnesota. And that means my work is focused on increasing access to childcare for families in Minnesota. And a big part of that is helping to open new childcare centers. I'm excited to see that there's so many people on the call who are thinking about opening a childcare center or in the process of working through the license application. And wanted to come today to make sure you know about the resources that we provide. As Lisa said, I think these are very helpful free resources to help you navigate the process of getting started and then continuing on after you get licensed. So this specific program, Childcare Wayfinder, is a navigation network for starting and growing childcare programs. And by navigation network, we mean that we can help you find your way through the sometimes complex processes like licensing or business development, helping you get connected to the many resources that are available. Lisa just summarized many of the organizations that are out there that are thinking about childcare programs, many of which have people available to help you. We think this is great. We think our state has really fantastic resources for you. And we know that it can be a bit overwhelming to see that list all at once. So one of the important things that we do at Childcare Wayfinder is we help you know which of those resources to access and when, especially when you're busy with the process of applying for a license. We have local navigators who are familiar with all these resources. So people around the state, there's about 30 people, are Childcare Wayfinder navigators around the state, and there will be at least one somewhere working near you. They know about all of the statewide resources that Lisa just listed off. They know about many local resources that are available in your area, and they're very, very helpful. Our navigators are very, very helpful to work with because of this. We have a lot of great resources for starting programs, like it says on the slide, and like many of you are thinking about right now. We also have resources to help you once you get going, resources to help you sustain your programs. And when I say we have resources, I'm really talking about our whole system beyond our organization, all the resources that are available throughout the state. So our specific unique job is to help you get connected to those resources. Sometimes that's helping you get connected to resources for licensing support if you're having trouble getting connected with your licensor. We can also help you get connected to resources for business development. We have partners at First Children's Finance and Women Venture who offer great business coaching and consulting support. We can get you connected to financial support, like grants and loans that are available, and resources for program development, especially coaching and training that can help you improve the quality of your program, like Parent Aware or the many courses that are listed on Develop. We're available to help with all of that, and as it says on the slide, we're available to just accompany you through this process. That can be someone to talk with about questions you have or obstacles you're encountering or just frustrating days that you have. We are available to stay with you through that whole process. For new childcare centers, we also have a startup voucher available. That is, depending on the size of your program, around $2,000, in some cases more than that. So make sure to connect with your navigator to learn about that specific, that Wayfinder specific financial support. And then once you get going, you'll be able to talk to your navigator more, or you can come find us then. But we're really excited to help you as you move through the next steps of thinking about ongoing staff training and retention and the day-to-day details of working with children. So next step is to contact one of our local navigators, and you can do that on our website, which I'm going to put in the chat. Well, I will put it in very soon when I find the chat button.
It's also listed in the handout.
Yeah,
And I did also send out the Childcare Wayfinder little flyer too.
great. Thank you,
So,
Lisa. I would encourage
right.
everyone to at least check out the website, to have even just a short conversation with your local navigator, just so you know who they are and you're connected, even if you're feeling pretty good in the process right now. We're a resource available to everyone, so please connect with your local navigator.
As I said early on, I feel like, in my opinion, it's an essential piece to this process of getting started. And so thank you so much, Matt, for being here to share about Wayfinder. Those navigators, I was at a conference with navigators in last spring, and they're super enthusiastic about this work. They really do want to, they're really committed to understanding the different resources that are out there statewide, and they want to walk through this process with you and kind of guide you so that your programs are set up for success. And it's really kind of cool. You get to develop a relationship with somebody that's also really committed to making sure your business gets off and starts operating well. So thanks again for all the work you're doing, Matt. I think it's a great, and again, this is a free service. How many businesses out there have somebody that's going to be there to support you through the process? I think we're pretty fortunate here to have you and all of your navigators. So thanks, Matt. And one of the resources that Childcare Wayfinder can and likely will connect you with, we wanted to really highlight. And because oftentimes at this stage of the game, when you're just getting your business started, it's very helpful to have a foundational understanding of the business side of your program. And again, too, while we are licensing and we stay in our lane, we understand, and oftentimes we hear about business questions or, about policy development or how many staff do I need to get my business started and where's my profit loss um, going to be? Well, there's again another free resource in our state here, and we wanted to highlight that and have First Children's Finance come in and speak to you. So we have Stephanie Sandvig here. Stephanie, you're with us, so that's good. I see you. Stephanie's going to tell you a little bit about First Children's Finance. So take it away, Steph.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. And good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. And thank you, DHS, for inviting First Children's Finance to speak with you all today. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Stephanie Sandvig, and I am a senior business development specialist here with First Children's Finance. First Children's Finance has been growing the supply and sustainability of excellent childcare for over 30 years. So we've been around for a while. We provide training and consultation services that focus on and are tailored to the business side of childcare. The most exciting part is that due to generous funding from DCYF and other regional partners, our consultation and training opportunities are offered at no charge for new or existing childcare providers. We offer many one-on-one consultations around the business side of childcare, such as rate studies, so kind of deciding how much you're going to want to be charging for your tuition, contract and policy handbook reviews, we can assist with that, and marketing consultations as well, getting your name out there and letting people know that you're a new center and available for enrollment. We also provide some startup support and financial modeling consultations to examine your projected revenues and expenses so that you can have an idea of how your program will cash flow once it's up and running. And then with our business plan and policy consultations, those are also excellent opportunities for new startup programs as well. In addition, we offer a wide variety of develop approved trainings that again are free to providers and individuals that are looking at going into the childcare industry. All of our trainings are focused on the business side of childcare, and we offer a wide variety of topics in that realm. We are currently in the midst of our fall training calendar, which we would love to have you join us for. You can find the list of all of our trainings available on our website, which I'll throw that in the chat as well here before I log off for today. And it's under the For Businesses section, and then you'll see a training section that you can click on and see all those trainings. We also offer what is called a business leadership cohort, or we call it a BLC for short. And these are free cohorts that are four-part training series to touch on a variety of business-related topics, such as marketing, enrollment, cash flow, creating SMART goals for your business. When providers attend all 4 sessions of the cohort, along with 2 one-on-one consultations, you receive Develop credit and RBPD hours. And you also get a business leadership credential that counts towards a parent aware credential. So you get a lot out of those 4 sessions of the cohort. Again, you can find more information on those on our website under the Childcare Business Cohort section. And then lastly, we are a CDFI, so we do offer lending opportunities such as loans, and then we do offer grants as well within our organization. For any additional information or to work with us here at First Children's Finance, we do have an email address that I can put in the chat. Otherwise, you can get connected through our website as well. I will stay on for a little bit longer to see if there's any questions that pop up in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for having me here today, everyone. And I look forward to working with you on your new childcare business.
Thanks, Stephanie. We appreciate you being here and everything that you guys are committed to doing at First Children's Finance. It's been really neat to see, as somebody who's been in the industry for 37 years, to really see the focus of the business side of childcare, and have it recognized as a business, is really, really nice to see the supports that the state has and your team has created. So thank you so much. All right, we're going to keep moving here. We wanted you to also be aware, Child Care Aware of Minnesota, which is kind of an umbrella area and our public facing site for educators throughout Minnesota. That is where you will find out more information as well about Child Care Wayfinder. And then there are numerous other grants and programs that are free to educators and childcare businesses through this Childcare Aware Minnesota site. So we wanted to mention them now. We're going to hear about some of these various things that are listed on the slide later in the presentation when we're talking about staffing and training. And so stay tuned for that because they will be here to speak then. But we wanted you to know Childcare Aware is another piece of the big puzzle. Also, Childcare Aware of Minnesota is also helping to support or provide guidance on another information or another big program to childcare centers and to childcare right now. The Great Start Compensation Support Payments Program. And so Great Starts Compensation is a program designed to increase compensation for educators directly caring for children. So this is really important for you to know as you start your business, that right now the state has really committed to offering compensation to educators, those working in your programs. Licensed childcare centers must use 100% of the Great Start compensation funds to increase compensation for staff working directly with children. So it's money the state is providing for businesses to help do that. Great Start compensation consists of monthly applications for funding with payment amounts based on the staff hours worked directly caring for children. You can find out more information about the Great Start Compensation Payment Program in your handout as well as on their website. And if Child Care Aware of Minnesota, again, has more information as well. And that is the phone number there. If you have specific questions about the Great Start Compensation Support Payment Program, you can reach them at Child Care Aware of Minnesota at 651-290-9704 or through their email at supportfunds@childcareawareminnesota.org. On their website, the Great Start Compensation Support Payment Program website, you'll find information including an FAQ about eligibility. And so, so seek that to find out more because it's a great commitment by the state administration to support educators who are working with our youngest children in childcare programs. And then two, we wanted you to be aware of Parent Aware because Parent Aware is the quality rating and improvement system for childcare educators and programs throughout Minnesota. Programs can choose to go through coaching, advising, or again, they have financial supports. There's grant programs. You can have your program assessed and rated a star rating that you can use for marketing your program. So we wanted you just to be aware of Parent Aware. It is the quality rating system, the QRS system for childcare programs throughout the state of Minnesota. So seek more information about Parent Aware to determine whether or not or where your program will fit in with Parent Aware. Also true, also Child Care Assistance, the program CCAP, we wanted you to be aware of CCAP because many childcare programs do participate as a CCAP provider. Now, Child Care Assistance is a state government program administered by local and tribal governments. CCAP serves approximately 30,000 children and 15,000 families each month to provide them with financial assistance to help them pay for childcare. And it helps parents pursue employment or education leading to employment. So licensed childcare programs may participate to receive childcare assistance payments by registering as a CCAP recipient program. So more information about participating your program as a CCAP program and having that funding source come in through the state through CCAP funding is can be found on the DHS Child Care Assistance Program website, included in your resource guide and handouts. So we wanted you to be aware of that, because too, again, all these pieces of the puzzle that make up your business, and here are some as well that we're not like really calling out specifically, but we wanted you to be aware of. We've mentioned the Minnesota Professional Development System, Achieve and Develop. That is where you will find for your educators, for your teachers, trainings that are specific to certain topics and have been approved to be used to meet requirements that we'll mention later. Because there are specific training requirements for staff that work in childcare programs. And so that Achieve and Develop is an opportunity for you to search for certain trainings. There's a knowledge competency framework throughout Minnesota that, again, helps programs understand what teachers should know that are working in early education. The Center for Inclusive Childcare is a amazing free resource with coaching opportunities as well as trainings and resources to help programs better understand and be appropriate to serve the needs of all children who may have a special need or I mean, for your staff even to have a better understanding and awareness of the very various developmental needs of children that they may be have in their classroom. And so seek out to learn more about the Center for Inclusive Childcare. They're lovely to work with. I've worked with them personally in some of the programs I've worked with in the past, and I can't tell you how much information we gained from working with the Center for Inclusive Childcare. The Minnesota Early Childhood Mental Health Resource. There are multiple resources out there statewide that support the mental health of both children or all the children in your care, as well as those who care for them. So there's information and funding that has been devoted to providing these resources free throughout the state for early educators. The Center for Early Education and Development is through the University of Minnesota. They have some numerous latest research on best practice as well as coaching opportunities. So check out their website. The Minnesota Association for the Education of Young Children is a statewide organization that is associated with the National Association for the Education of Young Children. I know as an early educator back in the 90s, I was encouraged to participate and have been a member since MNAC, but I was encouraged as an educator working in a childcare program to first participate in the MNAC conference. And then I actually was encouraged at a very young age to actually teach at the MNAC conference. And so it's a great way for professional development. So seek that out if you're looking to support that for your staff. Help Me Grow Minnesota and Help Me Connect are both resources that are multi-agency sources to better understand. Help Me Grow really helps better understand development in children. So it's a great resource for your staff as well as for parents that will seek out information from you as a business owner. They will probably, once a childcare program is operating, the parents you serve will really come to you for resources or knowledge about what's out there. So Help Me Grow Minnesota is a great resource on development, and or if a child might need an assessment done for their development, and if they might need some support services, as well as Help Me Connect. Help Me Connect is really a one-stop shop for multiple resources throughout the state to help connect families to the resources that are out there. Think Small is a nonprofit that does advocacy work as well as trainings and numerous things to support early educators and childcare programs. Women's Venture has received grants through DHS to help support their programs and support of businesses that are starting in childcare. And then there are also other local, we've mentioned them throughout, local supports and nonprofit organizations in your community. And all of these, again, all of these that I'm mentioning are resources that a wayfinder, a childcare wayfinder navigator will have more information about and can help you better understand all of these. Because, like Matt said, there are so many resources out there to support our industry. Having that navigator have a better understanding of what your needs are when you meet with them will be, just really help you kind of rein it in and see what's needed for your program. All right, so now we're going to move on, and I'm going to hand things over to Renna. We have talked about what you need to understand, so now we're going to talk about what your childcare as a business, how it fits in with licensing. So I'm going to hand things over to Renna, and I'm going to see you guys later. So take it away, Renna.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, so just like Lisa said, now that we've gone over much of what you need to understand, now we just want to talk about childcare as a business and how that ties in with licensing. So next slide, please. So starting a business in Minnesota is not a single decision. It's more of a series of them, and each one is an important step on the path to a successful business. Businesses that are unsuccessful tend to have similar things in common. Being aware of these commonalities and addressing them before you start is really important. Businesses that are started by individuals with a lack of business knowledge and experience, a lack of thorough preparation, or a lack of capital are unlikely to succeed. So really the first step is to decide whether you have the right stuff to be a successful entrepreneur, the right skills, the right training, and the necessary commitment. So today we are sharing how to prepare to own a childcare business in Minnesota, including setting up your childcare business in order to become licensed and accessing local and state resources to support your business needs. So as far as information about your childcare center, once you have determined that opening a childcare center is the right business decision for you and have an understanding of some basic compliance requirements, as well as where to find additional support when questions arise, you will need to determine your business structure. You'll also need to secure a location and decide how your center will run day to day. So for childcare center licenses, one of three options for business entity are available for license holders. Applicants will need to indicate whether their childcare center will be owned by an organization, a government entity, or an individual. This slide provides a little more detail about the various types of business entity. Ownership refers to the owners of the business, as well as the persons who provide governance and leadership in an organization or government entity. When applying for a childcare center license, an applicant is required to provide ownership information. Whether the applicant is an individual, organization, or government entity, and how the business is set up will determine who is identified as a controlling individual. Now we have a document titled Who or What Are Your Controlling Individuals? And that can be found by searching our forms for form number DHS 8000A, or you can find it in our under our forms section. This form is really intended to assist applicants with designating their controlling individuals. When you apply, you will need to upload verification for the type of entity your business is. Applicants that are organizations or individuals must submit formal documents verifying the business structure and registration with the Secretary of State office with the application. Most all licensed childcare centers are set up as organizations, not individuals. For programs that are structured as a government entity, a letter of verification that the applicant is, in fact, a part of a government entity, such as a school district program, and that the program has approval and is acknowledged as a program within the larger government entity must be included as a part of the application submission. So next slide, as I just stated, you'll be asked to identify which type of program your business is designated as. Minnesota statutes list the 3 types of entities that may apply for a child care center license, like we just talked about: an individual, an organization, or a government entity. License applications, again, from an individual are extremely rare. More common is that license applications are from organizations. An individual that is applying as an owner often sets up an LLC for the child care center business and license application and applies as an organization. The name, address, and phone number fields on the application for the applicant should be the same as is legally registered for the organization, government entity, or individual. For example, a church is opening a child care center and is completing the application for a license. The church would be the eventual license holder. Therefore, add the church's official name as registered with the Secretary of State, the registered address, and the phone number for the church in the section for the applicant. Or say a program will be called Rosie's Child Care Center, but is registered with the Secretary of State as Thompson Business LLC. Rosie's Child Care Center would be what is entered in the previous section identifying the program. But in this section, where an applicant must identify the applicant, the registered business name would be entered here. To learn more about these types of business structures, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development has a webpage that helps businesses learn more about the process for establishing a business. So next, with regards to tax ID info, when completing information about the applicant, there are fields to enter the Social Security number for the applicant, the federal tax ID, and the state tax ID numbers. If an individual is applying for a license, the individual's Social Security number is required. But if your business structure is an organization or a government entity, the application requires you to document the federal employer identification number and the Minnesota tax ID number for the business. Your federal employer identification number, that's an EIN, is a 9-digit identification number. You need it to pay federal taxes, hire employees, open a business bank account, and apply for business licenses and permits. The state tax identification number is a 7-digit number used to identify a business and pay Minnesota business taxes. You need it to withhold income taxes from employees' wages and make business tax payments. The Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, which is also known as MNDED, has a small business hub, and that has information regarding tax IDs and a link to obtaining a state tax ID and also a federal tax ID number from the IRS. So, controlling individuals and authorized agent. A controlling individual is defined as an owner of a program, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, and each managerial official whose responsibilities include the direction of the management or policies of the child care program. In addition to providing information on the controlling individual or individuals, the applicant must identify an authorized agent, and we quite often refer to that as an AA. The first controlling individual identified when applying will be considered the authorized agent on the license. An authorized agent is defined as the controlling individual responsible for communicating with the licensing department and with whom the licensing department will send all notices and orders to. Any one of the controlling individuals can be designated as an authorized agent. All controlling individuals must pass a Department of Human Services background study as a part of the license application process. The Licensed Child Care Center webpage has a worksheet titled Who or What Are Your Controlling Individuals, as I mentioned. And again, that can be found under our forms section under resource documents licensed child care centers can use. For more help and information on this topic, that's really going to be your go-to document. So organizational charts. An organizational chart, referred to at times as the org chart, must be submitted when applying for a child care center license. The organizational chart provides information about the structure of the business. An organizational chart is a visual chart that represents the structure of the company. It highlights how teams and departments are organized, the reporting relationships across the organization, and every individual's role and responsibility. The chart must list all controlling individuals, officers, owners with their respective titles, and the individual designated as the authorized agent. Now, the organizational chart is not required to be submitted on an official form and can be simply drawn as long as it is legible and clearly identifies the required components specified in Minnesota Statute Section 245A.04, Subdivision 1. So next, with proof of workers' compensation, you'll be asked to upload proof of workers' compensation compliance. Workers' compensation insurance is required for all licensed childcare centers. Applicants must have a policy in place prior to submitting the application, even if the policy will not start until the program is licensed. The Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry has a certificate of compliance workers' compensation law form that can be filled out, signed, and then uploaded in the Provider Hub. Filling out this document with complete information is important. If the form is not properly completed, it may prompt a request for additional information to be submitted and delay your application. We have a link to the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry form on our Child Care Center licensing application webpage, or you can search the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry website, where the form and more information on the workers' compensation requirements can be found. So next, finding and securing a location. Before submitting an application, applicants must have a location designated in which the child care services will be provided. When finding a location, there are multiple considerations. You will be required to submit a specific address with your application. That address may be a location such as a part of another business, like a church or community center, where specific space will be designated to be used exclusively for the child care during the hours of operation. The address may be a location that is part of another building with completely separate spaces, such as a location within a strip mall. Alternatively, the address may be a location where childcare will be provided in a freestanding building. And additionally, the address may be a future location where a building will be constructed for the childcare center. You will be required to submit the specific address with your application. However, you may or may not currently own, lease, or have possession of the space at that address. However, you will need to have enough of an agreement in place regarding the purchase, leasing, or possession of the space that will allow for required components of the application. Before a license is granted, you will need to own that or lease or have possession of the space. The local zoning authority will need to approve the location to be used as childcare services, for childcare services. In addition, you will want to ensure that during the application process, the facility will pass inspections by other agencies, including health, fire, and building. Child care center licensing laws in Minnesota have very specific requirements related to the indoor facility and outdoor space where the child care will occur. It is highly encouraged that applicants consider all the child care center licensing requirements, any enhancements to the facility to make the space suitable for group child care, the usable square footage, the outdoor activity area, and the operation plan when choosing a facility and location. It is also important to consider hazards and potential environmental toxins when choosing a facility to ensure that the location is safe for child care. So understanding the various requirements for your facility can be difficult. Do your homework before submitting your application to ensure that you understand the various local, county, or state requirements for your facility. In order for a license to be granted, again, licensing will require zoning approval. Zoning is the first stop for anyone who wants to know if a child care center is allowed at the proposed address. Zoning approval is based upon the zoning laws of the area in which the facility is located. Licensing will send a request for zoning approval to the local authority after an application is received. However, it would be very wise for you to look into zoning requirements during the process of choosing a location. In addition to zoning approval, all child care center applications will need building, health, and fire inspection approvals before a license is granted. The building inspection ensures that the space meets all the local building codes and building requirements specific to childcare. The health inspection will be conducted by a state or local health inspector. The health inspection determines whether a food license is needed. dependent on the level of food preparation and handling that will occur at the child care center. If a food license is required, the health inspector will ensure the facility meets the food code requirements in Minnesota Rules Chapter 4626. Fire inspections must be conducted by the state fire marshal or local fire code inspector approved by the state fire marshal. Fire inspections ensures the facility meets all fire code requirements. As with zoning, again, it is recommended that you look into those building health and fire inspection requirements prior to submitting an application. And again, after the application is submitted, we will initiate the official required inspections. You can find support in understanding the various codes from many sources. Childcare Wayfinder has local navigators that can help connect you with those resources, like Matt mentioned. If the building is under construction, your construction company or architect will be able to assist with fire and building codes. And then the state fire marshal website, again, like Lisa had mentioned, has a resource showing the step-by-step process individuals can follow before a fire inspection is requested by DHS. So program information is the identifying information about the program used to identify and reach the program. It is important to enter information that will be reachable and later be identified on the license. The name in this area is the name of the program. The address is the location that is secured to be where the program will operate. The phone number and email are especially important, as this is how DHS will contact the program if more clarification or corrections with the application or supplemental documentation is required. Applicants may not yet have a landline installed at this point in the application process, or may never have a landline. And if that's the case, we suggest a dedicated cell phone for the program. The phone number for the program can be a landline or a cell phone. The phone number entered is considered the center's contact phone number, not the phone number for the authorized agent. Next, we wanted to talk about the service types of childcare programs. So you're going to need to select whether the program will be a Head Start program, a day program, drop-in, night program, sick care, and or school age, like school age specifically, only school age. Applicants must select at least one service provided, but may select as many as will be provided. Generally, the most common request is for a day program, because a day program operates during normal waking hours, approximately 6 a.m. to around 6 p.m., operates and provides care for any child for more than 30 days in a 12-month period, provides care to any child for more than 45 hours in a calendar month. And aside from your typical day program, there are other types of programs that are out there, such as the drop-in program, a night care program, or a sick care program. With that, it is important to note that rule recognizes and specifies additional requirements that are specific to those less typical programs. Therefore, depending on which type of program designated, there may be additional things to consider and or compliance requirements that you need to think about. For example, if you're interested in drop-in, night care, or sick care programming, there are specific requirements designated in Rule 9503 that will need to be followed in addition to running a typical childcare program. If you choose to have one of these more specific types of programs, you go through the typical process to become licensed, but you would also need to prepare to comply with the specifics and rule that cover those specific types of programs. So for floor plan, you're going to need to upload a floor plan for your facility and provide room information. Minnesota Rule 9503.0155 explains the requirements for the facility. It specifies that indoor and outdoor space to be used for the childcare must be designated on a facility floor plan. This space must be exclusively for childcare by the center during the hours of operation. On the floor plan, you will need to label all spaces with the planned use for the space and the estimated size. For example, preschool classroom, 20 feet by 12 feet. Your signed licensor will verify all measurements when they are out for your pre-licensing visit. Rule requires licensed programs to have at least 35 square feet of space per child that you are looking to serve. Hallways, stairways, closets, Utility rooms, boiler rooms, bathrooms, kitchens, and space occupied by cribs may not be counted as indoor space. You will need to indicate the toilets and sinks in the center to be used by children. The center must have at least one hand sink and one toilet for each 15 children. And one toilet training seat or training chair must be provided for every 15 toddlers. Any hand sink required for children must be in the toilet area. You must identify tornado shelters and primary and secondary exits. And lastly, you must identify the outdoor activity area, including the dimensions of that area. The outdoor activity area on site must be enclosed and must be at least 1,500 square feet. If the outdoor space is not on site, please indicate where the outdoor space is located and the route that children and staff will take to get there. The outdoor activity area offsite must be within 2,000 feet of the program, or transportation must be provided. In no case, however, can the outdoor activity area be further than 1/2 mile from the program. Next, we'll talk about room information. So in addition to labeling your floor plan, you will complete the details for each room, outdoor space, and the facility as a whole, and whether it will be used for indoor or outdoor use. You will be asked to identify and enter the square footage of each room or area. The hub will generate a room capacity based on the square footage entered. The capacity on your license refers to the maximum number of infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and school-age children, the number that you are licensed to serve at any one time in a space and as a whole for the facility. It is important to note that the number generated by the hub will likely not accurately depict the actual capacity and may need to be adjusted because there are several things besides the actual room square footage that might contribute to the actual capacity allowed for the space. So while the hub will generate the capacity at this time to give you an estimated capacity, your program's official license capacity will be verified and determined later in the process due to, like we said, those multiple factors, including your city zoning requirements, fire and building code requirements, the size of the physical space used to provide childcare in your facility, and your ability to meet equipment requirements. In addition, it is good to know that rule specifies that hallways, stairways, closets, utility room, boiler rooms, bathrooms, kitchens, and space occupied by those cribs may not be counted as indoor space. Once your application has been assigned to a licensor, they will assist you to more accurately understand what your facility's capacity might be licensed for. Next, you will check which meals you plan to offer and where each of those meals will be prepared, whether on-site, catered, or provided from the child's parent or guardian. Childcare centers are required to ensure that meals and snacks are available to children during the licensed hours of operation per Minnesota Rules Part 9503.0145, Subpart 4. Licensed childcare programs must adhere to USDA meal components for each meal or snack. For example, if parents provide food and the center provides milk and then heats the food, then a food license may be required, and you will need to ensure that the food provided by the parents meets those USDA nutritional requirements. If not, you'll need to have a backup plan on how you will provide children with a nutritional meal or snack. And based on where the food is prepared, there may be additional requirements that come from the public health department. If you're planning to prepare food on site, contact city or your county to find out information about requirements for food service and kitchens in childcare programs in your particular city or county. Unfortunately, licensing cannot draw a clear line for whether or not a food license is required because these local health departments have their own rules and requirements for food licenses, and they vary from county to county. As we discussed in the previous slide, Minnesota rule requires that menus comply with nutritional requirements defined by the USDA. If you will be providing any food to the children in your program, your menu is required to be uploaded in the provider hub, and menus will be reviewed during ongoing licensing visits. If you will not be providing food, you can bypass this screen where menus are to be uploaded just by selecting next. Your menus must show that each meal provided meets 1/3 of a child's daily nutritional needs. The Minnesota Department of Education has more detailed information on USDA requirements for child care center license holders and applicants. The Child and Adult Care Food Program, CACFP, provides access to nutritious meals and snacks to infants and children as a regular part of their childcare. A variety of public or private nonprofit childcare centers, Head Start programs, outside of school hours, care centers, and other institutions which are licensed or approved to provide childcare services participate in CACFP. For-profit centers that serve low-income children may also be eligible to participate in this program. CACFP reimburses centers at free, reduced price, or paid rates for eligible meals and snacks served to children enrolled. That targets benefits to those children most in need. So with that, we're at 10:26, so we're about halfway through, and I think this is a good spot for us to take. I'd say we'll take a 5-minute. Let's take a 5-minute break. So coming back at 10:31, and stretch your legs and do a bio break, and we will start back up with policies and procedures at 10:31. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Rena.
Okay, I hope everyone was able to stand up and stretch and do everything that they needed to for that break. So we'll get that started again. So for policies and procedures, the next step is uploading policies and procedures developed for staff and then uploading the policies and procedures for parents. Each required policy and procedure must be created for the program and include specific information. In the Provider Hub, you will be asked to upload each required policy and procedure separately. The Hub will have a designated space for you to upload each separate policy, first in a section titled Policies and Procedures for Staff, and then once each of those are uploaded, you can advance to the next section titled Policies and Procedures for Parents. Some information is required in both the policies and procedures for staff and the policy information for parents. If an item is required in both sections, it must be uploaded each time in the Hub that it asks for, unless there is a box to check that allows you to use the previously uploaded policy, and you have checked that box. Only a few of the policies allow for that feature. In the following slides, we're going to go over the required policies and procedures. Now, next slide, please. We understand that creating all the required policies for staff and information for parents can be difficult and take some time. For that reason, our unit has created a very detailed resource document available to help you better understand the specific requirements for each policy and procedure, called the Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures, and that's DHS Form 4719. You can find it on the Licensed Child Care Center webpage under the section titled Forms and Other Documents, as well as in your handout. The Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures document is designed to help applicants with the creation of their policies and procedures. With this document, you will be able to follow along and make certain each required policy and procedure is covered for each audience, staff, and or parents, and contains the required language. The form is interactive, so you can download it and use like an Adobe program to open the document to use as a checklist to ensure the policies and procedures you create are complete. As you're writing your policies, don't be afraid to take the wording straight from this document or from Minnesota rule and statute. For policies such as behavior guidance and allergy policies, it is very important to meet the exact requirements. The language that is used in the guidelines document already meets these requirements, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to make sure the information specified on this document or in statute or rule is included as a part of your policies. So, policies and procedures for staff. Listed on this slide are all the different policies that are required for staff. The two starred are the policies that must be completed using our forms. Those specific forms can be found on our Child Care Center licensing webpage under the Forms and Other Documents section by clicking the option of Forms Licensed Child Care Centers must use to document required information. The other policy types not required to be on one of our forms still must include specific information. All of this is explained in the Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures document that I just mentioned. We are now going to go over a few of the policies that are required just to give you some examples of what is expected. We obviously do not have time to go over all of these required policies in this time frame, but we wanted to give you some explanation of a few for your reference. And if you're using the Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures to help you create your policies, you will see the resource document provides great details for each required policy. So, behavior guidance. Your program's behavior guidance policy will provide staff with guidance on handling behaviors of children in the program and is the first policy that the Hub will ask you to upload. Minnesota Rules Part 9503.0055 has very specific requirements of what needs to be included in the behavior guidance policy. The policy must include specific statements, and the license holder must ensure that the policies and procedures are carried out. Again, using the Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures document, as shown here at the top of the slide, will help you as it specifies some exact wording that must be a part of your behavior guidance policy. Don't be afraid to use that exact wording. It will save you time and ensure greater accuracy. For example, this slide shows the portion of the behavior guidance policy from the Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures document that details prohibited actions. We often see policies not including the wording at or by the direction of a staff person. Now, this wording trains your staff that they cannot perform these prohibited actions against a child or instruct someone else to do it. So it's important to include this distinction in your actual policy. You also need to include all of the items that are listed as prohibited actions. To note, you can definitely go above and beyond with your policies, but we encourage applicants to use the wording for these policies in the policies and procedures document and Minnesota rule and statute as a base. For emergency preparedness, another one of the required policies is the emergency preparedness plan. This is one of the two policies that is called out in statute to be filled out on a DHS created form. You will fill this form out and ensure the information is saved and then upload the document as requested in the provider hub. My dog is playing really loudly, so I really apologize if it's distracting. I can't really stop him, so I apologize if you can hear him. The child care emergency plan is a site-specific policy that a center must submit with their application as a part of the program's emergency preparedness policies. As I just stated, statute has specified that the program must use the DHS created document called the Child Care Emergency Plan. This plan outlines what the program will do in the instance of a shelter in place or lockdown situation and in situations where they need to evacuate the building. It also requires procedures for notifying parents, how accommodations are made for infants and toddlers, for children with a disability or chronic medical condition, how centers will ensure they have medically necessary medication, procedures for continuing operations, and procedures for communicating with appropriate officials. In addition, it is important to note that licensed programs are required to make the emergency plan available to parents upon request. As well, identified relocation sites and the evacuation routes to those sites must be posted in a visible place somewhere in the center. Staff must be trained on this plan during orientation, prior to first contact with children, anytime changes are made, and at least once per calendar year. Additionally, the license holder must review the plan annually. MOMA, this is the next one. The other policy that must be filled out on a DHS created form is the maltreatment of minors reporting policy. There are site-specific fillable sections that must be filled in, such as the contact information for local law enforcement before uploading it into the provider hub. A copy of this policy is required in both the staff and parent handbooks. Always ensure that you are using the most recent version of the policy. The most recent version can be found on our Child Care Center licensing webpage. Next, risk reduction plan. The licensed child care centers must develop a risk reduction plan that identifies the general risks to children served in childcare. The license holder must establish procedures to minimize identified risks, train staff, and annually review the procedures. For those of you that have been in the field for a long time, risks to children may be common sense to you, but remember that you'll have staff persons coming in with little or no experience. While you are not required to use our form, DHS has created a form that can be used and will help you address many important factors. All of the information being requested on the form is required to be a part of your risk reduction plan. It is generally most efficient to use forms that are developed by DHS to ease with documentation requirements when they are available, as they are developed with compliance in mind. Your risk reduction plan takes thoughtful consideration and is considered part of your center's policies and procedures. The DHS risk reduction form has been created to help make certain that programs think through and address various risks. We also hear that the DHS document on risk reduction plan helps meet the requirements of training your staff on risks to children in your program, and the plan to reduce the risks that are specific to your program. Make certain to fill out the form completely and with specific detail. Some of the other policies and procedures that need to be developed will be related to health and safety. Statute and rule require each licensed child care center to create health policies and have a health consultant review those health policies and practices. While the requirement to have a health consultant will not be verified until later on in the application process, it is important to note that having a health consultant is a requirement for licensed child care centers. A health consultant is a physician, public health nurse, licensed registered nurse, or community health board. And the credentials of the health consultant will need to be verified by your assigned licensor before a license will be granted. The center must have a health consultant review the center's health policies and practices and certify that they are adequate to protect the health of children in care. The review must be done before initial licensure, submitted with the application for initial licensure, and then repeated each calendar year after initial licensure. For programs serving infants, this review must be done initially and then monthly thereafter. A copy of the consultant's findings must be kept in the center's administrative records. There are some third-party health policies that we have seen programs purchase and use. It is just important to note that you need to understand the policies you submit for your program, and you are responsible to ensure that all the required information for each policy is included. So once you have created and uploaded into the Provider Hub each of the required policies and procedures for staff, you will advance to the step in the Provider Hub where you will upload required information for parents. Generally, the required information for parents is often developed into a parent handbook. As specified in Minnesota Rules 9503.0090 and detailed in the Guidelines for Developing Policies and Procedures resource, there are very specific details of information that must be included. In addition to the detailed information specified in rule and statute and captured in the parent handbook, programs are also required to develop and share their NAP and REST policy, maltreatment of mandated reporting policy, and a program grievance policy with parents. Licensed programs are required to inform parents of the program's policy and procedures for behavior guidance. So in the hub, you will need to upload your program's behavior guidance policy twice, once for each section. You may use the same one, or you can develop one to be directed toward parents that basically shares with them the policy your program will follow, making certain what you provide aligns. Next, for the child care program plan. The child care program plan is a required center-specific policy that must be created, submitted with the license application, and maintained. The plan must be written by at least a teacher-qualified staff person and must be reviewed by at least a teacher-qualified staff person each year. Documentation of this review must be kept on site. This plan can be included in your center's parent handbook or parent policies, and the child care program plan must be available to parents and guardians upon request. The child care program plan is meant to define the center's philosophy, curriculum, and overall approach to planned experiences that guide children's growth and development. The child care program plan must include specific items required by licensing. However, it can include more items specific to the child care center's approach. Licensing requires centers include in their child care program plan a statement that children are supervised at all times, information about the age categories and number of children your program is licensed to serve, the days and hours of operation, a description of the general educational methods used by the program and any religious, political, or philosophical basis, if applicable. Additionally, your plan must include the goals and objectives that promote physical, intellectual, social, and emotional development of the children in each age category. These goals must be consistent with the child's cultural background, a daily schedule for each age category that includes indoor, outdoor, quiet, active, teacher-directed, and child-initiated activities is required in the program plan, and the plan must state that there is daily access to interest areas. Finally, the plan must include a statement of how developmental progress will be documented and kept in the child's file, and that conferences will be offered to share progress with parents and guardians. Licensing requirements for the child care program plan can be found in Minnesota Rules Part 9503.0045. It is recommended that programs developing or reviewing the child care program plan take time to ensure best practices are considered and consult with other professionals as needed. So now we'll move on to some staffing. Understanding the staffing needs for a child care program is dependent on specific situations. Knowing how many staff will be needed in order to open and operate will depend on the size of the program and how quickly the enrollment grows. Regulations are related to staff to child ratios, group sizes, staff distribution, Staff qualifications and age categories must be understood in order to keep children safe and maintain licensing compliance. So for staff qualification, a childcare program will need to recruit and retain early childhood professionals that will qualify as a director, teachers, assistant teachers, and aides pursuant to Minnesota Rules 9503.0031 through 9503.0034, depending on the number of children being served. There are qualification requirements for each of the roles. A person qualifies for the position based on their own education and previous work experience. Childcare centers are not required to have a director, but if a childcare center does have a director, the director must be at least 18 years old, be a graduate of high school or hold an equivalent diploma, have at least 1,040 hours of experience in staff supervision and 9 quarter credits or 90 hours of accredited coursework in staff supervision, human relations, and child development. There are many different combinations of education and experience for an individual to qualify as a teacher or assistant teacher. Teachers and assistant teachers must be at least 18 years old. An aide is a staff person who carries out the child care program under the supervision of a teacher or assistant teacher. And an aide does not need to document education or experience. So qualifying for the requested role. You will need to calculate the number of hours of experience for the staff person and input that amount of experience. Experience means paid and unpaid employments as a teacher, assistant teacher, aide, or student intern in a licensed childcare center, a licensed family childcare program, a tribally licensed childcare program in any United States state or territory, or in a public or non-public school, or caring for children as a staff person or unsupervised volunteer in a certified childcare center, or providing direct contact services in a home or residential facility serving children with disabilities that requires a background study under Section 245C03. That's an important distinction. Education is verified by college or university transcripts, also referred to as post-secondary education. Transcripts do not need to be official copies. Now, if a variance is needed to qualify a staff person for the requested role due to a shortage of required experience or education, personnel variances can be requested and must be submitted in the Provider Hub. For staff distribution. So once you have your personnel hired and know which role each of them qualifies for, you can begin creating a staff distribution plan. As a license holder, you must ensure requirements for staff distribution are followed. Staff distribution must ensure that staff training requirements and background study requirements are met for all times of the day that children are present in the classroom. If a staff has a background study clearance notice that states that they are required to be under continuous direct supervision, a staff schedule should reflect that they are never working alone with children. The first staff member needed to meet the required staff to child ratio must be a teacher. The second member must have at least the qualifications of a childcare aide. The third staff member must have at least the qualifications of an assistant teacher. And then the fourth staff member must have at least the qualifications of a childcare aide. This pattern must be repeated until the number of staff needed to meet the staff to child ratios for each age category has been achieved. It is important to note that distribution is by age category, not classroom. This can be a very common misconception. Staff scheduling must meet staff distribution requirements, staff training requirements, and background study requirements for all times of the day the classroom has children present. Staff schedules need to account for scheduled breaks for staff and to ensure that staff to child ratios are met during staff breaks. It is very common for centers to be open for 12 hours of the day, and it is not realistic nor legal to have staff working all of those hours without a break. If a staff, again, has a background study clearance notice states that they need to be under continuous direct supervision, again, the schedule needs to reflect that they are never working alone with children. It is common that centers with 2 or more classrooms may have children from other classrooms in one of the rooms at the early hours and late hours of the day. For example, one preschool classroom is used for opening and closing and has preschool children for all hours of operation. And the other classroom may only have preschool children in the room daily from 8 to 4:30. It's very common. Now moving on to some training requirements. for orientation. Be sure to enter all dates when entering your personnel: the date of hire, date of first direct contact with children, and the first date of unsupervised contact. There is a distinction between the date of first direct contact with children, meaning the first day they will have access to children or their belongings, and the date of unsupervised contact, meaning the first day that they will be working alone with children. There are training requirements that must be met before first direct contact with children, and then additional training and qualification requirements that must be met before the staff person can have unsupervised contact. Note that abusive head trauma, child passenger restraint, and sudden unexpected infant death, or also known as SUID, those trainings are only applicable if required by statute. Abusive head trauma training is required for individuals working with a child under school age. Sudden unexpected infant death training is required for individuals working with infants, including staff that will be giving breaks in an infant room. And child passenger restraint training is required for individuals that place children in child restraint systems and vehicles. In addition, before having unsupervised direct contact with a child, the director and staff persons within the first 90 days of employment, and substitutes and unsupervised volunteers within 90 days after the first date of direct contact with a child, must complete pediatric first aid and pediatric CPR. So now let's move on to completing the application online and becoming licensed. So getting your childcare license in Minnesota is a process involving several steps. The childcare center license application process is described in phases. In phase 1 of the application process, you will submit an application for a childcare center license, which includes submitting information about your program and documentation such as ownership verification, proof of workers' compensation insurance, policies and procedures for staff and parents, and a facility floor plan like we've discussed. In phase 2 of the application process, you will be assigned a DHS licensor who will work with you throughout the rest of the application process. This phase has many working parts that both licensors and applicants can be working on simultaneously, and progression is not necessarily linear. There are many factors that affect how this phase progresses, some of which involve interaction with other agencies for required facility inspections, background studies, and engaging a health consultant. Additional submissions during this phase include documentation of administrative, personnel, and children's record requirements, and equipment and supply requirements. During phase 3, the program will be preparing for and scheduling the pre-licensure inspection, which is conducted by your assigned licensor. This pre-licensure inspection needs to occur and documentation of compliance confirmed prior to DHS granting you a license for your childcare center. So, what is the Provider Hub? The Provider Hub is an online site for licensed childcare centers. The hub allows providers to have that 24/7 self-service access to licensing information and a centralized location to complete applications, and eventually the CCAP provider registration process. The hub replaces paper-based processes and created a more efficient and user-friendly experience. So getting started. Before you get started, we strongly recommend visiting the Provider Hub Getting Started webpage. A link to this helpful site is included in your handout, and this page holds PDF quick guides of information that you will want to know before logging into the Provider Hub for the first time, including a checklist of what you will need to gather prior to starting the application in the hub. The site also holds an e-learning on how to complete the application process for a licensed childcare center. The resources for the Provider Hub are available in English, Hmong, and Somali, and there's a phone number provided to a language line if an applicant needs help in a language other than English. So once you have entered and uploaded all the required information in the Provider Hub, you will need to read the privacy notice in order to move on. You'll be asked to upload the Applicant Agreement Acknowledgement and Verification Form. This form can be found on our website under our Forms that Licensed Childcare Centers Must Use section. This form is included in the handout as well. You will need to print the form and bring it before a notary where you will sign the form and have it notarized. It is important to note that you should print and complete that form prior to logging into the Provider Hub and starting the application so that you can complete the entire application in one sitting. In order to complete the application, you will also be required to pay the non-refundable application fee of $500 and the $50 fire inspection fee online when prompted to do so. So once your application has been submitted, our support staff and supervisors will review the application and assign a licenser to your application. There may be a little bit of time between when you submit the application and when you hear from licensing. An email will be sent to the authorized agent from the provider hub titled Childcare Application Assigned to Licenser. And this will provide the applicant with the name of the assigned licenser. The assigned licenser will review all of your policies and procedures, your floor plan and org chart, as well as what you listed on your application with regards to the age groups you choose to serve and the capacities for each group you wish to serve. You may receive a notification requesting more information on something that may have been incomplete or some discrepancies that need clarification on the business side of things. And once that's taken care of, your application then will be moved to phase 2. The next email from the provider hub that the authorized agent will receive will be titled Phase 2 Application Instructions. And there you will have provider actions to complete in the provider hub with regards to uploading documents and adding personnel. When the licensor is assigned to the application, they will reach out to the authorized agent and introduce themselves, either by phone, email, or both. At this time, they will provide you with the best way to communicate with them during the application process and throughout the first full year of licensure. We will ask for the best way to contact the authorized agent through the entire application process. It is important to note that until the license is issued, the primary contact person will be the authorized agent. During phase 2, your licensor will review your application and provide you with a 45-day written notice about any policies and procedures that are incomplete or missing, initiate inspections from other agencies, ask if you received an email from the background study unit to set up Net Study 2.0, that account, and see if there are any questions you may have regarding setting up a Net Study 2.0 account. You should begin running background studies for the authorized agent and controlling individuals. And please note that if any controlling individuals reside outside of Minnesota, these studies can take more time. So starting this process as soon as possible is best practice. Your licensor will let you know of the next steps in the application process, as well as ask when, ideally, the first date of care at the program will be. Your assigned licensor can go over that timeline with you and give you a better sense of whether that date is reasonable. They will provide guidance and answer questions, and then eventually conduct an on-site pre-licensing inspection, and then continue to work with you during your first full year of operation. With regards to incomplete submissions, once your application and uploaded documents are received, they will be reviewed by DHS to ensure that everything is complete. Applications are reviewed by support staff from the licensing unit and your assigned licensor. Communication may come from either individual depending on where in the process the application is. If anything is missing or incomplete, a notification will be sent to the provider hub, and then you will have 45 days to submit what is missing, and failure to do so may result in a denial of a license for your program. Typically, the 45-day notice is about missing, incomplete, or non-compliant language within your policies and procedures. Just to note, the $500 application fee is non-refundable. So if that 45-day window closes and what is needed is not received in time, the applicant may need to resubmit the application and documents from the start and pay the fee again. For affiliate inspections and approval process, during this phase of the application, inspections will begin moving forward. With regards to zoning for the building and inspection requests for the building and health department, the inspection requests are taken care of by DHS. No additional action is needed by you for that part. Local jurisdiction will contact DHS an applicant if the zoning is not approved. You'll need to pay the $50 fee for the fire inspection at the time when the application is submitted. The building, health, and fire inspectors will all reach out to you individually to set up those inspections at a time that will work for everyone involved. You must ensure that a person is on site when these inspections occur that has full access to the entire facility. If codes for affiliate inspections change, your DHS licensor may not know the details. The inspector for that type of code will be the best resource for questions on this, for example, fire or building codes. Administrative records. As a licensed childcare center, you will be required to document and collect certain information that can be accessible to your licensor at any time. In the forms section of our webpage, you can find a checklist for record requirements. There are checklists for administrative, personnel, and children's records located under the title in the forms section, Resource Documents Licensed Childcare Centers Can Use. The center administrative records listed here are the records that we would need to access at any time your program is in operation and will be reviewing during the application process, as well as throughout the time your license is active. These records include the information given to parents, personnel records, children's records, child care program plan, risk reduction plan, emergency plan, accident, injury, and emergency record, fire and tornado drill logs, crib inspection forms, staff distribution schedule, separation reports, and the health consultant report. For some records, such as drill logs, an accident, injury, emergency record, separation reports, because you won't be operating yet and you may not have those documents in use, a method of how to document in the future will be reviewed by your licensor before a license is granted. For children's records, they are required to include the child's name, date of birth and home address, the parent's name, address, and telephone number, how the parents can be reached when the child attends the center, individuals authorized to take the child from the center, emergency contact information with the authorization to act on the parent's behalf, health information from the child's source of medical care, immunization records, the hours and days of the week the child will attend the center, documentation of any dietary or medical needs, parent conference documentation, and for infants and toddlers, information on routines and habits for eating and sleeping. A sample of your child enrollment form and a sample of the form you will use to document children with special needs or allergies can be uploaded if you do not have an actual completed form from an enrolled child in your center waiting to start. The Minnesota Department of Health has created a system that, as a license holder, you may use to access immunization records of the children enrolled in your program. The Minnesota Immunization Information Connection, also referred to as MIC, is a confidential system that stores electronic immunization records. You do need to enroll to participate with this system. MIC makes keeping track of vaccinations much easier. The MIC system is a great help, as well as when you're required to submit immunization records of enrolled children to the Department of Health yearly. Participating with MIC is not a requirement, but definitely recommended. You can learn how to enroll by visiting the Minnesota Department of Health website, clicking on individual and family health, children and youth topics, and selecting schools. The link for how to enroll with MIC, as well as instructions, is included in your handout. The license holder shall not disclose a child's record to any person other than the child's parent or guardian, the child's legal representative, employees of the license holder, and licensing staff, unless the child's parent or guardian has given written consent or as otherwise required by law. For personnel records, the items listed on this slide is the information required that you document and keep up to date for all staff persons that you've hired to work with in your child care center program. The checklist for personnel record requirements is very helpful to help assist you with organizing what information will need to be entered into the provider hub for personnel and ensuring that all of the record requirements and staff training requirements are met. The form references other documents that have been used to verify requirements. However, all personnel information required for licensing will now be entered in the hub. So please do not be confused when using our forms that have not been updated with the new online process. Requirements for personnel include, but are not limited to, personnel information, qualifications for the position, orientation, CPR and first aid, child development, and in-service training. It is important to note that you will not want to begin training your staff until all of your policies and procedures have been approved by your licensor. Once you receive that email stating that your application has been pushed forward to phase 2, your policies and procedures have been approved and you can begin training your staff. With regards to pediatric first aid and CPR training, the requirement is that all staff must be trained in pediatric first aid and pediatric CPR within 90 days of employment. It is important to note, though, that statute requires staff to be supervised when working with children until this training has been completed. So while there is a 90-day window to complete this training, a staff person may not work alone in a classroom until the training is complete. Your licensor will ask for proof that you meet this requirement by viewing the staff person's card or certificate they received when they completed the course during their on-site licensing visit and during future licensing visits. Child development and learning training is a training that is required within the first 90 days of employment as well. And then subsequently, 2 hours of training must be completed every 2 years going forward after that. DHS also has a requirement of yearly in-service training hours for staff. Full-time staff, meaning that they work on average more than 20 hours or more per week, must complete 24 hours of in-service training per calendar year. Staff that on average work less than 20 hours per week must complete 12 hours of in-service training per calendar year. Your licensor can help you assess how many hours are needed the first year, as though the hours will most likely be prorated depending on when in the calendar year your center first opens. However, in-service training hours are never prorated based on how many months of the year a program is open for business. Meaning that if you open a program that will only operate during the months of the school year, the in-service training requirements of 24 hours per calendar year for full-time staff and 12 hours for part-time staff remain the same. So now I'm going to hand things over to Lisa to take us through some more of our slides.
All right. So as we talk about staffing and staff training, there are some ongoing staffing needs, and we completely understand that as your business builds, there are some questions about staffing. And I want to reassure you too, once you submit that initial application and are assigned a licensor, your licensor will be able to help you with a lot of that information that Rena just went through about what is required for tracking various things and documenting things. So rest assured, again, if you get nothing else out from this, is we are all available to help you throughout this process. But with ongoing staffing needs, understanding the staffing needs of your program is very dependent on your specific situation. Knowing how many staff you will need to open and operate depends on the size of your program, how quickly your program enrollment grows, etc. Your program budget, along with your program growth needs, can be a delicate balance to understand. Hence, us getting you connected with a navigator and/or First Children's Finance, who could possibly help you understand better what you're going to need to get things started. Having a good grasp on regulations related to staff ratios, staff to child ratios, group sizes, staff distribution, and age categories is super important to understand. However, again, your licensor is a great resource to help answer some of those questions and how they typically see other programs handle various situations. How you address your staffing will cross over into your business aspects of running your childcare program. Therefore, again, that balance between understanding licensing regulations and business needs is very helpful, and why we're telling you this now before you really get started, so you can do a lot of that research now. Let's see here. If your staff chooses to offer or have substitutes or volunteers, that too, there's information or important specific requirements associated with those various roles related to background studies, supervision, and training as well. So, which brings us to training. There are, as Brenna mentioned, very specific training requirements for staff that you will need to understand and develop a plan around each time you hire a new staff person. They will need to be oriented. There is orientation requirements. You will need to provide, they will need to be provided with the required trainings as well as meeting ongoing training requirements as well. So there are some resources listed in the resource guide that can be a good resource for trainings. Various partners throughout the state offer trainings that are develop approved. And so searching either develop for training opportunities or again, some of those partners to access trainings that they offer to see if they will meet the training requirements. And all of the training requirements we have, there's a section on our training or our Child Care Center licensing webpage that has a training section. And in that section on the website, there's more detailed information about what those specific training requirements are for various staff roles. In addition to that, we have created other like tracking documents that will help you understand what those requirements are per role and help you to understand what needs to be then entered into the provider hub. Understand that your staff and their continued support and growth will be one of the greatest assets to your program success. Supporting staff and their professional development is not only a great boost to the quality of your program, but is also a great strategy for retention. So, for with regard to ways to meet ongoing professional development, as I mentioned, many of our partners offer develop approved trainings. You can search the Minnesota Professional Development System, which uses the develop tool. So if you search develop tool, it will take you to the develop site. It's an established professional development system for early childhood professionals in Minnesota. Develop has a searchable site to look for approved trainings for staff that will meet some of the required trainings. However, programs will also need to develop and provide much of their own training specific to their program. In fact, many of the requirements related to training are specific to the program and the program's various policies and procedures. So that will be a responsibility of the license holder to ensure that all of your staff have the required trainings, whether they are ongoing trainings that are develop approved or those, much of them, the health and safety trainings that are specific to your program. In addition to providing training, as I mentioned, license holders are also responsible to document training and enter the training information into the personnel records in the provider hub. If educators have an account with Develop, they will have a learning record for all Develop approved trainings that they register and attend. So that makes it easy to track some of those trainings that they've taken. And also just note too, we've got Achieve mentioned here. Achieve works, that's also part of the professional development system along with Develop. And what Achieve is that is where educators who work in your programs can upload their transcript information so that they can track their own career path on a career lattice. So it's also another resource out there that is just as really empowering for the educators that work in the programs, the childcare programs out there throughout the state. And as previously mentioned, we have worked to create many forms that can assist you to understand what training requirements are and what it helps you to stay up to date in meeting those requirements. So using the forms that we have created for orientation and yearly in-service are for your information only and are available on our Child Care Center webpage. To meet the documentation requirements, however, you do note that now that the Provider Hub is up and operating, once you track all of that information, you do need to keep you will need to keep the Provider Hub up to date with trainings because there will be section that will make it easy for you to track and keep everything entered in so that our licensors are able to also access it to watch for compliance maintenance. Sorry. All right. Now we're going to move on to a little bit of the resources that are out there to help support you as you are thinking about the professional development of your staff that you hire, or you can lead or help your staff know about. Because again, empowering the staff that you have in your programs is one of the greatest things you can do for ensure that your program will be represented well and will find success. So today we've got Heather Charmoli here and Lynn Barton from Childcare Aware. Heather is the Childcare Aware of Minnesota's Professional Development Systems Coordinator, and then Lynn Barton is here to share information about Empower to Educate. She's the Empower to Educate Coordinator. So I'm going to hand things over to Heather and Lynn to take over.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Heather Charmoli, and I'm a childcare aware. And we are an organization that offers a lot of services to the field. So you may find us through Parent Aware. We offer coaching, technical assistance. We do some grant disbursements. And we do a lot of professional development and training, which is, of course, my area of expertise. And we also provide support through trainers, coaches, consultants, and mentors. We offer Teach scholarships, which is an opportunity and Lynn will go over that more in another slide, for scholarships for childcare providers to increase education, and retain bonuses to keep people in the field and act as a opportunity for recruitment and retainment of educators. And then we also offer foreign credential evaluation opportunities for people who have education outside of the United States, as we're trying to figure out how they're fitting into the developed system and achieve career lattice. We can offer supports in that area as well. And so, like I said, my area of expertise is professional development, and we offer what's called professional development advisors. So they work with programs to learn about what trainings are necessary. We work with parent-aware advising specifically. If you are looking for, before you open a program, some workforce navigation, we do some workforce advancement support. So if you're looking to change roles or get someone from an aide to a lead teacher. We work a little bit with licensing variances and higher education advising, CDA guidance, learning community support, some funding supports, and some other credentialing. We help work, professional development advisors provide guidance on goals to professional development for programs and career planning, so they can help you identify what areas you'll need to get more training on, and help connect you with trainers to come in and provide that training for your staff if it's something that you're not able to do yourselves. We do use the Minnesota Knowledge and Competency Framework as a basis for our professional development goals, and we provide intentional and appreciative advising when we work through our relationship-based professional development as well. Lynn, I'll let you take it from here.
All right, next we have information about the Empower to Educate program, which supports and advises those early childhood educator newly in the workforce. So if you have somebody who is coming into your childcare program and they've never worked in childcare before, or if you have an aide that would like to be, you know, a teacher in your room at some point, they can come to the Empower to Educate program, and they will work with an advisor to help support them. And some of the supports that we offer in Empower to Educate are some of those wraparound services, and we'll talk about a few of those in the following slides, as well as, you know, just career and development advancement. We work with educators who are new to the field, and, you know, they may not have a resume, or they may not know how to interview or look for a job. We encourage them to go to, they were talking about Achieve before, and we encourage people to go to the Achieve job board posting, which, you know, is a free resource for you to be able to post any kind of openings that you have in your programs to get some high quality educators in your programs. There's mentor and mentee opportunities in Empower to Educate as an optional programming source, where you can either work with a peer mentor from a childcare center, or if you have a great educator in your program and you think they'd be a great mentor, then you can put them through the mentor program, and we will train. They have a 24-hour develop training that we put them through, and then they can start to work with your staff to mentor people in your staff. And there's, as well as career and education supports, we have like a develop package, a free training package that is in English and Spanish or Somali. We work with the educators to decide what their career goals are, where they want to be. And if we, one of the things they might choose to work on is a CDA. So then if we go to, you know, we can help, our advisors will help connect them with the supports, getting their CDA, help paying for that, the training that, or the application fee. If they're interested in getting a CDA, Childcare Aware will submit that CDA application cost to the CDA Council. Or if they're needing help for training, then they can put in for a reimbursement. And again, they can work with that advisor. Any advisor in, I'd like to say there's a lot of different programs and supports out there, but the main goal is to, you know, just like connect with an advisor and they will help you find the right supports for you. Because yes, this realm is kind of overwhelming, all the different supports that are out there. I encourage you to just, your handout, your resource guide has, everything linked that we're talking about today. But you can just kind of dig around a little bit more. And if, somebody is looking for supports, to just kind of peruse the website, because all of these little resources are on there. And so if they're, wanting to move on to, if they have a CDA, or they want to, go to that higher ed, the 2-year associate degree or the 4-year bachelor degree, we've got Teach Awards, which will cover 85% of the cost of tuition, and books, and gives a travel and stipend release. So you can, really build up the quality of your program, by, encouraging your teachers to become highly educated, and support those children in your program. And then next we have a teach program, or a retain program. And if they are not doing a CDA bonus, or a teach teach, if they're not getting any other awards, then they might be eligible for the retain. And retain is, exactly, it is a retaining early educators through retaining incentives now, but everybody just refers to it as retain because that's quite a mouthful otherwise. But there is educators award to help keep people in the profession. And they range usually from 1,000 to 3,500, depending on the development, their education and experience levels and what they do. These bonuses are competitive, so you are not guaranteed. Most teach awards are funded, but retain, the money fluctuates from state funding from year to year. So, and it's based on the amount of other people that are applying for the retain, so it is competitive. But that money, the retained money, is used for supplies, for training, personal, anything you want it to be used for, because it is that money for that teacher to use how they choose. So again, you have questions, just refer to your resource guide and poke around the Childcare Aware website. So thank you.
Well, thanks both to Heather and to Lynn for sharing information. We know that staffing at this point, when you're getting ready to get your program operated or opened, can be a lot. And we just wanted you to be aware again that there is a lot of resources out there to support you in doing so. And supporting your staff, because like we said before, those staff are very, very important. So now we're going to come to kind of a little segue here. We're going to move into scheduling your pre-licensing inspection. So, you've thought through, you've got your application done, you're working with a licensor with other requirements that need to be submitted. You're working on, getting your building ready and everything, your staffing set up. You're going to, at this point, when you're getting really close to pretty much having most everything approved, that is when a pre-licensing inspection will occur. The pre-licensing visit is considered the last step of the application process prior to being issued a license. You and your assigned licensor will schedule your pre-licensing inspection once your building, health, and fire inspections have been completed and approved. All controlling individuals and staff who will be working with children on that first day of licensure and moving forward have a cleared background study. All staff training has been completed at this point, and personnel records have been submitted and approved to get everything ready to roll. So at this point, your space should be set up and ready to go for children. In the event that an application is a change in ownership and the former program is operating until the new license is open, you will have a conversation with the licensor that's assigned to your program, but generally it is okay to continue operations during that pre-licensing inspection before we close one license and open the next. And so that conversation will happen with your assigned licensor. The facility preparation, as we discussed on the previous slide, your facility should be all ready to go and set for children during the pre-licensing inspection. We recommend reading through Minnesota Rule 9503 many times prior to your visit so that you know how the facility needs to be set up and what is required. Some things to prepare. For emergency equipment, you'll want a battery operated flashlight, battery operated radio, fire extinguishers with valid inspection tags, first aid kits with all of the required equipment. So those are required emergency equipment. Hazards, maintenance of areas and equipment such as sharp objects, medicines, plastic bags, poisonous plants, chemicals, household supplies. Edges of rugs firmly fastened. Equipment should be in good shape and no peeling paint on the walls or anywhere. A telephone. There's a requirement that centers have a designated telephone for the program. If a cell phone is used to satisfy the requirement of this subdivision, the cell phone must be accessible to staff, be stored in a centrally located area when not in use, and always be charged for use. The program will need to have supplies ready. So again, you're setting your program up, preparing the facility to be ready for this pre-licensing inspection with toilet paper, paper towels, hand soap, facial tissues, anything you might need in that respect must be ready to go. If you're caring for infants, you will want to ensure that the cribs that will be used will meet all infant safe sleep standards and safety requirements and be set up, again, as ready to go, as if children were there. And you will need to hang required postings. And the required postings that you will need in your facility are an evacuation map in each space used by children indicating the primary and secondary exits and tornado shelters. On this map, you will need to identify the persons that are responsible for each area. For example, you could say that the teachers are responsible for the evacuation of children from the space and aides are responsible for grabbing the first aid kit, etc. So everyone knows what their role is during an emergency and it's been well thought out. Your staff have been trained and they know what they're responsible for. You'll want to make sure that the map identifies the building evacuation routes and off-site relocation sites and that the relocation site is the same site listed in your child care emergency plan. You'll need to have telephone numbers and sources of emergency medical and dental care, poison control, fire department, health authority, and DHS licensing posted somewhere that is accessible to your staff. If your center, again, will have a landline, it's best to have these list of phone numbers posted near this phone or where that central location is where that cell phone is being stored and accessible to all staff. Instructions on how to use a fire extinguisher and how to close off a fire area need to be posted. Diaper changing procedures need to be posted in all of the diaper changing areas. If you will be using any experienced aides in your classrooms, identification of who those staff are and which classrooms they will be working in will need to be posted for parents to see. And then there are other postings you will need to hang up after you're licensed. So once you receive your license, it must be posted in a conspicuous place within the childcare center. And as a licensed program, once you are operating, you must also post or notify the parents of exposed children the same day a parent notifies the center of a child's reportable disease or illness. So what you should expect the day of your pre-licensing inspection as an applicant. So at this time, you will have the facility set up as though we're going to serve children with all of the required administrative, personnel, and children's records available for review. You should plan to be in attendance to interact with the licensor during the entirety of the pre-licensing review. Other controlling individuals may be required to be in attendance, as well if the applicant is an organization or government entity. And a controlling individual should be prepared to answer questions that will indicate their knowledge and understanding of licensing requirements and the program's policies. Although stakeholders, consultants, and attorneys can be present during the inspection, do note that these individuals cannot interact with the licensor on behalf of the applicant. It must be the applicant who answers those questions and shows their understanding of the responsibilities that they are signing on as a licensed program and a licensed applicant. The pre-licensing visit tends to be one of the longer visits that you will have with licensing. The timing of the pre-licensing review really varies greatly among your program. Your licensor may be able to provide an approximate length of time for your pre-licensing inspection, depending on the size of your facility and the information that they have received in advance. Your licensor will ask you questions regarding rule and statute to ensure your understanding and ability to be in compliance. For example, they could ask about ratios and distribution, behavior guidance, or allergies. And what your licensor needs to really know is that you have knowledge of what to do for various scenarios that the licensor cannot see during this visit, because you're not currently operating an open serving children yet. So they may ask you to kind of anticipate a certain situation and how will you handle this. So make sure you are knowledgeable about licensing requirements and your own policies, even if you are using a third-party policy. As an applicant or license holder, the law specifies that you have the ability to demonstrate competent knowledge of the applicable regulations and requirements of statutes and rules. So what the licensor will do at this time, your licensor will review and inspect your facility. They will verify all the measurements, review the space for hazards and maintenance. They will look at the amount of and the condition of the equipment and supplies in your program. They will review that documentation and policies are accessible on site. And they will ask questions to ensure, again, that the license holder has competent knowledge of applicable laws and rules and statutory requirements. Most licenses are not granted at that pre-licensing visit. So be prepared for that. Don't be like planning to open exactly the next day, but generally, at this point, most programs are pretty close to being ready to serve, and you will have conversation with your licensor to kind of really determine, how quickly you will be ready to operate. Um, so, so that conversation is something you can have with your licensor when you get to that point. In some very rare cases, there are things that are found during that pre-licensing review that might warrant a second on-site inspection, but usually our licensors work with our applicants to avoid that as much as possible. And therefore, when things are ready to go, your licensor will be the person who will inform you of that your license is approved. But so just note that you must not operate until your licensor informs you that your license has been granted. Do note that it might take a little time for you to get that paper copy, that official license in the mail. But now with the Provider Hub, there will be opportunities for you to also print one up or off through the Provider Hub, so you can post it yourself once that permission is granted by the licensor. All right, Rena, I'm going to give it to you, and we will do. We will need to slide through these slides fast because we are behind. We apologize again. This is our first time running through this, and it's a lot of information here. So
we'll get through it. We'll get through
Alrighty.
it. So let's talk about classroom equipment. So you're going to want to take some things into consideration. Does it meet the needs of the children that you're going to serve? Is it age appropriate? This includes the containers that you're storing that equipment in. Are they plastic? Are they glass? Can paint chip off? Are they durable for the kind of use that they will get and made out of safe materials for children, particularly infants and toddlers? Things like wicker look really cute, but they can shred into pieces that children could eat. Hard plastic bins could injure an infant if they fall, if the bin falls on them, or the material could break and leave sharp edges. You want to make sure that equipment is accessible to children at all times. Can some pieces go directly on the shelf, or are containers, bins, or baskets needed? Remember that accessible at all times means that equipment is in an open child height shelf or tabletop, in an open bin organized in a way that is developmentally appropriate. If equipment is in teacher height cupboards, on teacher counters, in closets, in reach of children, but in containers that can't be opened by children, that equipment would not be considered accessible at all times. Is the equipment available to be used in a variety of activities? Are all 8 interest areas, science, arts and crafts, construction, fine motor, gross motor, sensory, dramatic play, and music, are those accessible to children? Is the equipment clean and in good repair? In good repair doesn't have to be brand new, but it does have to be clean and able to work in the way that it was intended and free from hazards. For example, A dramatic play kitchen that is missing the sink faucet would not be considered in good repair because children could not play with the equipment as it was intended without the sink faucet. For equipment requirements, while every center is unique and much of what you purchase for equipment may be based on the layout of the facility, reading the rule and reviewing the equipment lists will tell you the basics of what is needed. Included in your handout are links to equipment lists for all age categories, including one for infants, one for toddlers, one for preschool, and one for school age. As well, you can find all of the equipment lists on our Child Care Center licensing webpage, again, under the forms and other documents, and then toggle down to resource documents child care centers can use. We understand that you may not need to open all of your classrooms on the first day of business because of enrollment. However, we cannot open or license any program space until it fully meets all licensing requirements. And that includes making sure that all of the required equipment is present in the classroom and ready for use. Equipment is broken down into age categories, and some pieces of equipment will require you to have a certain number of items, while some equipment is required to be an adequate amount for the amount of children being served in that classroom. For example, you're required to have at least one non-folding chair for every child licensed in the classroom, but with respect to art supplies, we're not requiring that you have a 24-count box of crayons for each child, rather that you have an adequate amount of crayons for children to work together to participate in an art project where children will be using crayons. In some situations, more than one group can be in one classroom because of the size of the classroom, and the size of the classroom would allow for it. For situation-specific questions like this about equipment and groups, ask your licensor to ensure you're meeting requirements in order to be issued a license. It is important to note that as you are purchasing equipment for your center, you pay mindful attention to the recommended age use for the equipment and only use equipment in your classrooms that are appropriate for the age that is being served within that classroom. Each classroom will be required to have several different types of equipment for the children to use. Large muscle equipment engages the large muscles of the arms, legs, and core of the body by balancing, pedaling, jumping, climbing, rocking, or pulling. Large muscle equipment enhances the development of coordination, stability, balance, and control of the body. It also gets children moving for better physical health and energy release. Infant mobility equipment includes equipment that help infants move themselves, such as kicking gyms, push toys, and riding toys. And infant mobility equipment that help others to move them are things such as a stroller, a wagon, or a buggy. Visual and tactile stimulating materials engage the senses of sight and touch with shapes, colors, and textures to explore. Examples of sensory stimulation materials include mobiles, cause effect activity boxes, sand and water activity materials, swatches of different textures of cloth, and wooden or plastic items of different shapes and colors. Manipulative equipment connects together in different ways, like snap blocks, tinker toys, magnetiles, pop beads. Manipulatives can also be activities that incorporate tongs, latches, locks, lacing, stringing beads, and pegboards. Manipulatives enhance fine motor, those small muscles, that fine motor development to prepare small hands for writing and tying, etc. Cognitive development equipment includes matching games, concept puzzles, magnifying glasses, equipment related to sorting letters, numbers, and shapes, nature items, and physical health and hygiene equipment. As a pro tip, these are a great use. Those checklists are a great use for a resource for you to use when you're operating day to day, so that you and your teachers know what equipment is needed and how many items are required as equipment needs to be replaced over time. For equipment classification, on the day of the pre-licensing visit, your licensor will count your equipment to be sure enough is available for the children that are served by the program. You need to consider the number of children for each age group, your licensed capacity for each age group, children with special needs, any equipment that may be shared between groups, equipment for rotating out, etc. There are equipment items that could be classified as many different types of equipment. Ultimately, you decide what type of equipment an item will be classified as. However, once a type of equipment is counted as a certain type, it cannot be counted again as another type to meet requirements. An equipment item may be both a manipulative and a music-making toy, but can only be counted as meeting one of those requirements. For arranging equipment, on the day of the pre-licensing visit, licensors will be looking to make certain the materials are set up in the classrooms and that equipment is organized into clearly defined interest areas that the children will have daily access to. Interest areas are defined as creative arts and crafts, construction, dramatic or practical life activities, science, music, fine motor activities, large muscle activities, and sensory stimulation activities. Taking the time to set your classrooms up with clearly defined separated interest areas with furniture and equipment arranged in a way that will engage children activities will help with that classroom management. Now, back to Lisa.
All right, so we are going to talk now about being licensed. So once your program receives its license, and again, your licensor will communicate with you when your program has met all of the requirements and to become licensed and when you may begin operating. After that happens, you will receive a copy of your official certificate in the mail from DHS. As I mentioned earlier, in addition, there's a feature in the Provider Hub that allows you to print a copy. Once the licensor on that license certificate, you will see the name of the license holder, the address of the program, the capacity, including the breakdown per age group that the program is licensed for, any special conditions if applicable, and the effective date and expiration date of the license. Do note that each calendar year on December 31st, all child care center licenses expire. So you will receive advance notice from DHS of the steps to take to renew before that time and pay the annual license fee. Once your license is issued, all those named on its license holders, controlling individuals, all of that remain with that license, and that license is not transferable to any other person or organization. Minnesota rule requires that once a license is operating, the license certificate must be posted in a conspicuous or noticeable place within the childcare center. As you renew your license each year, you will receive a new one mailed from DHS, or again, because of the feature, you can print it off before you get one, of the most current, accurate information. If there are ever needs to change something with your license, your child care center license, as a license holder, you will need to, statute requires that the license holder must notify their licensor and receive approval before making any changes. So this includes any of the information listed on the license, including the location of the center and any services, as well as changes in the authorized agent or any of the controlling individuals. Information that is listed with the Secretary of State or any changes to the federal or state tax ID associated with the license are also things that you would need to notify your licensor of. If the provider there is a function available in the Provider Hub for you to submit change requests, and your licensor will respond and either approve or reject the change request in that Provider Hub. So at times there might be additional information that the licensor will inform you about before the change can be approved. So again, you will want to ensure that the approval is given right away before you operate with those changes. It is important to note too that since licenses are not transferable, a change in ownership does require a submission of a new application for a new child care center license. So in that case, reaching out to notify and share information with your assigned licensor of the current license will expedite the process and again help that transfer occur. All right, and now we want you to know too, as a licensed program, you're not done dealing with us. You're only getting started here. So we just wanted you to be aware that our DHS licensing unit does work very hard to communicate information out to our licensed programs. As a license holder, it's important for you to make certain you stay alert to the various communication opportunities that we offer from our child care center licensing unit. We send out Gov delivery emails. You may hear that referenced in the future. We call our emails that Gov deliveries, and we send those to authorized agents with very important information that needs to go to a program, to a license holder. So we send out Gov delivery emails to authorized agents and to those also who subscribe to our email updates with for important information and updates. So we work hard not to oversend information, but reserve these sorts of emails with important information. We do also offer webinars such as this. We have um, outreach connection webinar provider calls or webinars where we allow questions to come in, and we work really hard to pull in partners from different agencies or areas where we know that license holders might need to hear information from, and we share that. We also spend a lot of time at various conferences or director group meetings, um, and and so you'll want to stay alert to that. Watch our webpage. We have a news and updates section where we usually alert the public to opportunities to hear from us. We also do create and offer some developer-approved licensing specific trainings, and we have some recordings available on our webpage of some that we've done previously this year, one on behavior guidance and one on understanding better the individual child care program plan. So you can look for those and watch for others to come in the future. Do note that each legislative session each year, there's an opportunity that there may be requirement changes or updates for licensed child care centers. So as a license holder, it's important to stay alert to that. Again, our DHS licensing division will send out communications via the Gov Delivery email system, and we often will post information on our website if there's any relevant information that needs to be relayed. In addition, we work with our policy team to create an implementation plan each year after the legislative session is so that we can have information shared with licensed childcare centers explaining how any changes that might occur during the legislative session, how it impacts their programs and what they need to do. So we create that. And then we send that out to those through that Gov delivery system, as well as post it to our childcare center licensing webpage. And in addition, we always post, or we've got an archived list from the past several years for reference if you're wanting to look back to see how things have changed through the years. During legislative session, our partners at Childcare Aware Minnesota, they offer a bill tracker where you can read about proposed legislation and watch it as it moves through. And then also think small public, they have a public policy information email that also alerts people to throughout session of what's going on and what's happening, so you can stay alert. And then do note that there are some and have been some changes to support childcare in the last several years here. You've heard about the provider hub, and that is newer to us. I mean, our childcare centers, our licensed childcare centers have been using it for the last year now. And there are continued improvements and features being built in the provider hub that will continually be rolled out to programs or for providers. You've heard about the childcare wayfinder. That is relatively new. Now they've been operating for the last a couple of years, offering that free support for applicants and license holders to build capacity in childcare throughout the state and help providers through the process. Um, there is a child care regulation modernization project that is going on right now. You may have heard about it. There's been some news coverage on it, and we are working very closely as a licensing division, and there's a specific team working on the regulation modernization that have been doing a lot of outreach opportunities to work with the public and license holders to work together to update rules so that things can be more user-friendly and applicable to current needs for childcare. And then there are, again, numerous capacity building initiatives and industry support. There's grants, there's that Empower to Educate, that free job board that you've heard about, and then a reminder back to the Great Start compensation payment program plan, which was funded to be an ongoing program. There was the initial roots that happened during COVID, and the state saw the importance of growing and helping build quality workforce in the childcare industry, and so that's where that Great Start Compensation Support Payment Program came about, and continued money has been initiated and given toward early learning scholarships so no more families can find support in funding their childcare, and on and on. There's been additional funding and uh, fee raises for the childcare assistance program, as you heard about the creation of the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and many other things. And so stay alert, watch what's going on our website and our partners websites to hear more about all of those supports, because really it is actually an exciting time in our state, because we are really seeing such attention to childcare and the importance of this industry. And so I feel we're very fortunate because we have a lot of great resources and supports out there. Before we really move on, and we're going to run out of time, there's a childcare business update tool that is there for providers to use to update their openings and let families know about their program. So it's a free resource, again, housed through childcare. Well, it's actually housed through Parent Aware of Minnesota. You do not have to be a participating program or go through the rating system to use this. But using the business update tool is a really great resource for you to let families know who are searching for quality childcare about your program and any openings you might have. It is also a tool that is used to help our state and federal government understand the needs of childcare, and it does influence funding that we get. So we're going to talk real quick about licensing reviews, because as a licensing team, this is really our area, our lane. Do note that once you are licensed, that our licensors and or any of our um, partners within our investigative teams for like maltreatment investigations may be out in your programs throughout the year if need be, and they do have the right of access to be in your programs. They need to have access to the physical plant and the grounds where the program is located, to documents and records, including records maintained in the electronic format, to persons served by the program, to staff and personnel records of current and former staff whenever the program is in operation and the information is relevant to inspections or investigations. And upon request, the license holder must provide the commissioner, or it would be your licensor or investigator, verification of documentation of staff work experience, training, or educational requirements. Let's see here. The first year monitoring, also part of capacity building efforts that have been, really a strong part of this administration and of our team, has to provide additional support for programs when they're just getting started. So during the first year of monitoring, you will have a licensor who is part of our early and often team, who will provide additional support and really understanding. They're very aware of what it takes for programs and what programs are going through as they're getting started. So your early and often licensor will be assigned to you for your first year. And they will provide multiple visits during the first year. The first one is scheduled, and then subsequent ones are unannounced per federal requirements that licensing visits be unannounced. We do know, we do this so that we can help businesses really get off to the right start, and then offer some of that extra technical support during that first year. After your first year of licensure, your program will likely transfer to a different licensor, and the licensor will continue to conduct unannounced inspections of your center on a yearly basis. They too will be available throughout the year if you need them by reaching out to them with any questions you might have, but they will conduct yearly inspections, which allows us to provide, again, more of that technical assistance to ensure that programs are following and understanding how to be compliant. And they understand or help you with a better understanding of licensing standards. So prior to your yearly visit, you will be notified in the provider hub that your licensor is requesting updated staffing paperwork. So you will have instructions on how to prepare for your annual unannounced visit. that kind of alerts you that your yearly inspection will be coming up within the next several months, although they could stop in at any time, and you will not, be notified of an exact date. Um, and once your yearly inspection is complete, you can expect an exit interview during that type of review with your licensor. So during the exit interview that occurs during unannounced yearly inspections, your licensor will go through the visit with you and discuss any licensing violations that were found on site, if there are any. And the exit interview may be conducted in person or scheduled over the phone on your availability. Okay, just a few more. I guess we will get through this. I've got 5 minutes. Investigations. In addition to your yearly review, you can also see DHS licensing out to your program for investigations throughout the year. So if a person in the public or in your program has concerns about a licensed program, they can make a report. Reports can go through 3 different ways. If it is determined that a report does not allege abuse or neglect or licensing violations, somebody could make a complaint or share information with us. And if it could be screened out. We have an intake team that is trained to screen out or assign issues that come in. And so there are 3 different ways things could go. A complaint could be screened out. Um, if there is an issue that is licensing specific, it might be assigned to a licensor to come out to check in on any licensing requirement violations that might occur or not. Or if there are other issues that could be related to like the maltreatment of a child, then it could be assigned to a maltreatment investigator who would come out to follow up on about alleged or suspected maltreatment of a child. And sometimes you might see our maltreatment investigators working closely with licensors. So actually there's kind of that combination opportunity that could occur as well. So you could see somebody out at that point. On-site visits can result in a number of different finding results. During your yearly review, if there are no licensing violations found, you would be issued a licensing review report that would state that. Currently, during yearly reviews, a program might receive a licensing action called a fix-it ticket that would result in a program showing noncompliance for some predetermined violations that have been recognized to be less severe as others and have been identified as a fix-it ticket item. If that's the case, then your licensor would share with you information about what you would need to do. You would need to become compliant within 48 hours and fix the violation. And then you would have 7 days to send documentation of the correction to the program's assigned licensor. But again, if you were issued a fix-it ticket, you would receive information about that. Other licensing actions that can occur as a result of a licensing visit or investigation could include correction order, which is just that. It's just something that says that there's an item out of compliance that needs to be corrected. If other licensing issues become more chronic or numerous or are serious, a program could be issued a conditional license. There could be a suspension. If there's imminent risk of harm, a temporary immediate suspension could occur. A license could be revoked at a certain point. And there are other certain licensing actions, such as certain safe sleep or background study non-compliance issues or maltreatment violations that could result in a fine. So more details on all of this information and on licensing reviews can be found. We have a whole section under the Child Care Center licensing webpage on licensing actions and licensing reviews. Preparing for a visit. Oh, for any licensing visit. So we're often asked how programs can prepare for a licensing review. And really the question to that is you should always be prepared for a licensing review to occur because like I just said, that could occur at any time for numerous reasons. Reminder to you as that licensing standards are minimum standards for health and safety and that all licensed childcare centers must maintain at all times. So not just when you're preparing for a review, but your program should always be in compliance, or you should strive for that. Ways to ensure that your program is always prepared, oh, and it is noon, is to incorporate a licensing understanding into your daily operation of your program with your staff. Ensure that your staff are well trained and continually trained. Have it be part of the conversation on a daily basis where you're talking about licensing standards, because it just really helps everybody to work together to ensure your program is ready. I just have two more slides. Public postings, we wanted you to be aware that um, we are, as a state, required to post certain information on the deaths, serious injuries, and or instances of substantiated maltreatment occurred in licensed childcare settings each year, and those are posted to our public facing site on the Minnesota Parent Aware website. So we just wanted you to be aware of that as well. DHS has used LIL, which is the Licensing Information Lookup System, since 2010 to offer the public the results of licensing reviews and we must do that. Both of these postings are, again, federal requirements our state must do as a licensing division. We must comply with and ensure that the public has awareness of these situations. So with all of that, oh my goodness, that was a lot in 3 hours, and we know you're probably way overloaded. I know I am. Thank you so much for attending. Um, we will stay on here to answer any questions, and I'm going to call to my panel because I have not been able to follow the chat for a while now to see if there's anything else that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, this the big thing is we do have someone that's asking about wanting the list of training that's required for childcare centers. And again, I'm going to really suggest that you visit our website. The link to that is in the handout, and go to the training section. It fully outlines what is required for staff and for directors as well. You can read it in rule and statute, but it's a little bit easier to comprehend because it's in plain language on our webpage.
Yes. And in that section, as Rena's mentioning, there it guides you to some of the resources that are there to help you there's some charts and some forms that we've used or created that will help you understand who needs what based on what role in your program. So a lot of great resources there, as Rena's mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. And then Elaine just mentioned who does the training. And typically in a center, the director does do some of the training. It really kind of depends. There's training that can occur through Develop. Staff can go to certain trainings. Think Small sometimes offers different kinds of training. So
Yes.
it's really not specified who does the training, except for CPR and first aid. Obviously, they have to be qualified to conduct the training.
And for those specific to your program, it, like Brenda said, it's usually either the license holder, the director, or somebody in the program that is responsible or aware of what those specific trainings are and policies and procedures, so that your staff are you're all on that same board. So.
And then someone asked about the webinar being recorded. Yes, it is being recorded, and we will have to run it through the filters of getting it transcribed appropriately and ready to go to be posted on a public website. So it takes a couple of weeks, and then you can find it on our webpage. So there's you go.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all. And oh goodness, again, I won't shut out the webinar. If you have any last minute questions, we'll stay on for a few minutes. But when I see people dropping off, then I will close out. And we thank you for attending. Please reach out to our licensor on call if you have license specific questions, or if you have questions again specific to this. Ren and I are around to try to guide you to the right place. So thank you all.
Thank you. And then for Victoria, even if you didn't use your Develop, if you didn't register through Develop, if you put in your Develop number when you registered for the event, because it was one of the questions that we asked, I will be using that and entering that in. Otherwise, I also do a name search too for those people that fully attended. So if you want to, you can pop your number into the chat right now and I can note it. Otherwise, I should be able to find you just fine.
Well, thanks everyone. Stay dry.